Dimp Digital Presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat bonus stage. This is our occasional bonus show where we produce our infamous Spoilercast, Fantasy Gaming League updates, the legendary Dimp Digital Gaming Quiz, and more. On this episode, it's going to be the Horizon Forbidden West Spoilercast. And I'm joined by a very, very special guest today. Another man who has walked through the forbidden door. He's the former co-host of Podcast Reload, the former co-host of the Coffee and Beer podcast, the former co-host of the Beer Umvirate, and is currently one of the co-hosts for the infamous Pixel Pints podcast. It's the Seoul, Japan dweller, Evan Piotrowski. How's it going?
Good. I feel like you're Sean Evans from Hot Ones, where you actually dug deep with a bit of research, start doing some deep cuts like the 14 episode run of Coffee and Beer, which I didn't think I would hear again. So
What?
I appreciate it. And yeah.
No, I'm just impressed because I have done many podcasts and changed lots of names and all that, and most people have done one podcast and then stopped. But I was like, this is like a man I can relate to who's done several different iterations and naming conventions of podcasts. I thought this is there's a link here. But yeah, you've been around the block, and we hear you most weeks on Pixel Pints over there. But you've taken some time out of your busy schedule to talk about Horizon Forbidden West, which we've both played, both completed, and both platinumed. And we'll get into some trophy bits and pieces later because we know that you're a quite the avid platinum hunter. So I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that. I wanted just to kick things off by kind of just setting the scene of our experience with the first game, I should say. Any expectations we've got, and how long we played the game for. So this is a spoiler cast, so we're going to be spoiling most likely. I mean, I can't say for sure, but we're going to talk about the story of Forbidden West and Horizon Zero Dawn. Because it's a sequel, it's a direct sequel. So I don't feel we can do it justice without talking about both. So if you want to get out, now's your time. And also, if you've clicked on this and not read the title, it says spoiler cast. It's like, maybe next time, don't wait for me to tell you or expect me to. Idiots. But what's your quick thoughts on the original? Because it's been, 5 years since the original? What did you make of Zero Dawn? It's a new IP, Guerrilla Games. I must admit I was a bit sceptical because I didn't really like the Killzone franchise. And I was thoroughly impressed with what I played in 2017, albeit not perfect.
Yeah, so I remember following the game since it had its initial E3 teaser. And again, it's one of those things where we're used to these Killzone games, and the last game that they had made, Guerrilla Games had made, was Shadowfall, which had middling reviews,
Yeah.
I think. I actually was never really interested in the Killzone games either. I only ever played the first one on PlayStation 2, and I actually really, really liked it, but I think that's only because all my friends were playing Halo, and I didn't have an Xbox, so I convinced... it's like the kids who really like Sonic, but deep down inside they know actually Super Mario World was a better game, and they just didn't have a Super Nintendo, right?
That was me when I was younger.
Yeah. It's okay. I get it. You play what you got. And it's just one of those ideas where you see it's a post-apocalyptic world, but then you've got this big hook with these machines, and there's already a mystery in front of you. All right, is this the Earth? If so, like, what the hell happened? Why are these machines running around this post-apocalyptic world? How many thousands of years have passed since? So it had all these interesting elements immediately. Not only that, but it was beautiful and striking, especially when you see the here we go, the Thunderjaw and the tall necks. It's basically like the Jurassic Park shot, the Brontosaurus Welcome to Jurassic Park, and then you get this like kind of pan up to see the tall necks kind of going past the screen at the end and then cut to black. So, huge first impression, and yeah, played it the week it came out, I believe, in March, almost 5 years to the day, and I think it was a great game. At that point, everything in that game was very novel because it was new,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Had a leg up there.
yeah, and this time around, maybe not so novel. We can talk about that later. But yeah, I really like the game, and one of the reasons is the gameplay loop was solid. Like the main gameplay loop being the combat and using specific weapons to target specific areas on the machines to break them off, to not only make it easier to kill them, but also to pick up those items for crafting and so on and so forth. That whole loop that everyone's very familiar with if you've played all those games. So yeah, I really liked the game. It got caught up in the whole release the same week as Breath of the Wild.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I actually did a podcast with Tomb Raiders and Ultimate Brent, the guy who designed the Sifted and Easy Allies website, worked for Game Trailers as well.
Yes.
We kind of compared the two, and but anyways, yeah, I really liked the first game, Platinum it, the Frozen Wilds when that
Yes.
came out. I 100%ed that game,
Wow.
and I think it's ridiculous. If you can have a game that like I Am Mayo or this game that I played, Micetopia, where you can just like tap a mayo canister and get a platinum trophy, why can't DLC have platinums
Yes.
either? I think
Right.
that's, especially if they require like quite a lot of from you, even if the game is only 5 hours. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, 100% of that, platinum the first game, and was really looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
not an evangelist
No.
of the game at all. Like I liked it, but I moved on. It wasn't my game of the year. It was Breath of the Wild, so
Oh dear.
yeah.
Yeah, we spoke about
I
it
should
before.
probably shouldn't have.
Funny, but we spoke
I
about
probably
that.
shouldn't have said that.
I came on podcast reload because we've done game of the year, and we spoke about that then because it was the second coming at that point, and now Elden Ring's the third coming of Christ. So we've got that again. It is crazy that they've just had the oxygen stolen once again from them by another open world game that is perceived to be changing the industry, and I can't help but feel that's kind of damaged the outlook for some people. I've had Adkins, who's a weekly regular here. He stopped playing Horizon to go on to Elden Ring. So he had to. The FOMO just got to him, and now he's gonna have trouble going back to that. I feel because they are, although they share a similar kind of outlook. The moment to moment stuff's very very different, and now you're not allowed to have quest points and waypoints. It's not allowed. They've got to be eradicated. We've got to go back to the 90s for that. So I replayed through Zero Dawn about 6 months ago because I hadn't got the platinum. And the reason I hadn't got the platinum is because I was rushing to finish Zero Dawn in time for Zelda and the Switch, because it was like a double release. I was like, I want to play the Switch. I've got this thing pre-ordered. And then Zelda was just getting silly scores. So I was like, I'm going to have to jump on this. So I basically rushed through the back third of the game, didn't do many of the side quests, etc. Got to the end and I was like, there we go, done. 6 months ago, I went back and played it. And I was surprised at how well it kind of held up. I don't know if I wasn't expecting it to be bad, but I enjoyed it almost, probably more in fact, because I just spent the time to go through it and 100% it. And I played the DLC, which I hadn't done as well. So that was kind of like new content there for me. And yeah, that kind of just reaffirmed my opinion of how good a job I felt they'd done on Zero Dawn, especially with a new IP. Granted, it has an advantage in that it's new, and I think that has a factor, particularly for people's perspective on Forbidden West. But yeah, I was really positive. This was like the Forbidden West was, in terms of expectations or anticipation, this was the first real PS5 era game that I've been looking forward to. Like Ratchet and Clank, I was like, yeah, I'll play it. Returnal, I was like, I'm unsure. That looks really hard, and you can't save during a run, so that's annoying. And then some of the third-party stuff hasn't been, too compelling. But I was like, I'm looking forward to this one. So that's where I was when I was coming in. In terms of open-world games, Evan, is this a genre that you typically lean towards, or do you get frustrated with them? I know some people what we call open world fatigue. So, they played so many of them in X amount of years, they're fed up of them. Where are you with open world games and that genre at present? Because there's a lot of them around, and some people only dip into the ones they feel like they're going to find compelling.
Yeah, I definitely do have open world fatigue. I choose my open world games very carefully just because I am sick of them. And I remember where it was. The one of my breaking points was I was playing GTA 5
Right.
and I was in a car on a main mission in a story mission in the game, and they're having a conversation in a car, and I'm like, I just kind of thought to myself, you know what? This whole game is kind of just tricking me from going from point A to B to do a thing, and then go back to the base. And it's tricking me into thinking it's novel or unique because of the dialogue that we're having in the car. But it's just two people swearing and yelling at each other. And then once I focused on that, I'm just lots of open world games are just going from point A to B
Yeah.
and maybe having someone talk to you over some sort of intercom, or maybe you get a bit of atmosphere with the crowd around you speaking,
Yeah.
just telling you what to do, and then you do a bit of combat or whatever the main gameplay hook is in that specific game, and then you go back and then maybe you get something from it. And I know that's painting open world games with a very broad brush, but it was just that moment where I kind of saw behind the curtain. I'm like, just you really need to be doing something unique with open world games now, because if you don't, I'm going to see that structure.
Yeah.
It's almost like X-ray vision, and like, oh, this is just another one of those. But that's not to say that I don't appreciate them. I like the Far Cry series, which is one of the most now one of very cookie cutter open world games.
Yeah.
And I've platinumed a few of those. I platinumed 4, Primal, and Far Cry New Dawn, maybe. I even played 5 and New Dawn back to back.
Damn.
Assassin's Creed, I was a huge fan of the old games. I haven't played any of the
Interesting.
new ones. When they added all the RPG elements to it,
Yes.
Breath of the Wild is it's an open world game. It's a very different style of open world, but so yeah, I have a bit of a weird relationship to it. So anyone who's really into open world games, you can take what I say with a grain of salt, because I am not the biggest open world fan, and I do need a buffer in between open world games, just because I do not like massive maps with ridiculous amount of collectibles and side quests. It's almost like a JRPG. I play 1, maybe 2 max a year, because
Yes.
I can't do it.
Make
I
yourself
can't
sick,
do it
can't
anymore.
you? Overindulge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about open world games as well. If I space them out one a year or 2 a year, then I do not get sick of
Yeah.
the very this the thread that they all kind of share
Yeah.
of so that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I play. Well, I don't play a lot of open world games. I actually don't get on, or haven't got on with the Far Cry series, but have with Assassin's Creed. I've played all the mainline ones, other than Rogue, I think, including the new ones, and particularly like with Valhalla. Fuck me, that's a
I
big
heard,
game.
didn't you play like 100 hours of that game, or?
Yeah, yeah. I played over 100 hours because I've played the DLCs as well.
That is the best reaction for a modern Assassin's Creed game. You play 100 hours? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I did do that. But I'm a glutton for punishment with things like that, because I have a real problem with fast traveling unless it's contextualized. So, like, what I love about Breath of the Wild is you use it's in a world of fantasy, for lack of a better term. Like, you basically teleport using the Sheikah slate, and you like go into a little blue fucking thread and go, oh, okay, that's fine. This works in the world. But where you're just essentially would be traveling from horseback to A to B, I'm like, well, what might have happened on that journey? This is an open world.
Right.
It's supposed to be a breathing world. Like, I feel like I'm cheating the game slightly. And I actually enforced that rule for Forbidden West. And when you hear the hours that I played, you'll see why they're so ballooned. It's because I did that. And obviously the way you move around in the game significantly changes, but it's a bit late on. So it wasn't quite enough to kind of speed up that process. But I do enjoy them, but I find that the setting, or the area in which it's setting, needs to be compelling, or it needs to be kind of a different take on the genre. I'm looking forward to getting into Elden Ring, but I'm sort of kicking the can down the road for some reason. Like I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm just finding excuses not to go off and play it.
I'm terrified of that game, to be honest with you. I have it as well. I bought it the day it came out for some reason, and I haven't touched it yet.
That's good restraint, because you must have been. Because I appreciate that, because Adkins is the worst. He like buys everything and plays half of it, and it infuriates. He starts it. That's the thing. He starts it, then leaves it. Whereas I know you're a bit of a stickler like me, where you want to commit to one item if possible and just see it through. And you're very thorough as well. Like the amount of games you platinum and 100% in comparison to me is extraordinary. But I kind of appreciate that disciplined approach where you just want to give what you're playing the full amount of time. And if you stop enjoying it, it's not the end of the world. I find that quite interesting as my opinion changes over the course of a game. But I know some people are like, right, if you stop loving it, then you have to stop playing it. I don't know, I'm going to see this project through, and then I'll have some interesting thoughts to share.
Yeah, that'll come back around later in this spoiler cast. But yeah, like I've said it on Pixel Pints before, that I am not necessarily good at video games. I am just extremely stubborn and persistent.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of cutting off my nose to spite my face sometimes.
Yep.
Like if I'm not enjoying stuff, like play something else, play something like have fun. But no, I do have to see this through.
There's an enjoyment of getting over the line, isn't there? There's something more fulfilling to me of getting over the line of something and finishing it than quitting halfway through. Like that trumps the in the moment frustration of 50 hours or whatever it might be, depending on the game. But yeah, this is very much an open world game, and I found the setting of Zero Dawn Horizon quite compelling, which draws me back. Same with Ghost of Tsushima. That does a few different tweaks in terms of waypointing and stuff for the wind. But again, I don't remember playing a game that's set in Tsushima in an island off the coast of Japan. So I think that's correct. You correct me on the Japanese stuff, because obviously I'm terrible at not just pronouncing the names but locations and other cultural things.
I know on Discord we've had some moments where I've said a couple things about journalists' pronunciation of Japanese, specifically Japanese people's names, like developers.
Yes.
But no, you're correct. It's basically in between Korea, South Korea, and like Fukuoka, which is the southwestmost main island of Japan. I don't know if it's exactly in the middle, but somewhere abouts there. I would actually love to go now, and I think I feel bad. You know what? Cut it. Let's. That's not very important. We're not talking about Tsushima. Let's talk about.
We can. We can one day. It's not a problem.
Sure.
Yeah. So how long did you play Forbidden West for? Because again, one of the things I appreciate about the game is on the save file or your save slot, it will tell you quite explicitly how long you've been playing it for. So do you remember what you had clocked up once you finally kind of put it down and finished with it?
I believe, and I appreciate that stuff too. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 that try to obscure that from you. Just let me know how long I've played the game. Who cares? Put it out there, please. I think about like 85-ish hours, although I'm kind of sick in a weird way, and this drives Her Majesty crazy. And this goes for movies as well. I won't pause anything. If I'm watching a movie on Netflix,
right,
I'll just go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
and if I miss something, I miss it. It makes no sense, but I do it all the time. It drives her crazy.
You treat it like you're in a cinema where you can't pause it.
Yeah.
So you're just like, well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can't go to the cinema, so I want to recreate the atmosphere as close as possible. Like if I missed it, I missed it. I had to go to the bathroom. So I will not pause games if I like go over to fix myself something to eat.
Yes.
And I could just press the options button. So maybe -5, probably like about 80 hours, give or take 4, something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when I finally put it down after I'd got the platinum, and I was messing around afterwards for a little while, I clocked up an astonishing 106 hours. Wow. So a lot of that is traveling. I am horrendously slow though. Like I think I spent 10 hours in the Dawn fucking about in there. So that's the level of thoroughness sometimes I do. But then I make myself ill and can't do it anymore. And that's when I get to the stage where I end up mainlining stuff. So I need to get a balance. And I kind of I forced myself to not mainline this, and that's the hours that it cost me of my life. But for better or for worse, another 100 hours clocked in on an open world game. That doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Let's shift gears into kind of like the narrative piece, because one of the interesting things about the original, I felt like, was the setting, like the overarching story about what happened. Kind of had all these nice surprises where you alluded to earlier, you weren't quite sure whether we was on Earth, what's the time period, what's really going on here, and they reveal that to you throughout Zero Dawn. And Forbidden West doesn't have that advantage because you kind of know the gig's up at this point. You know what the state of play is. You know the big secret of what's happened to Earth. So they've had to go in a different direction. They go... This is not surprising, but it's a lot more sci-fi driven than I had anticipated. And that might sound stupid to say, considering there's robots roaring around and it's like an AR device, it's holograms. Like, it's clearly... Earth was left in a sci-fi state way beyond what we have now, but because everything's grounded in tribes and spears and bows, it always felt very, not medieval, but something that would have been set in the past. But this time they address things with space travel and the far zeniths and things like that. But what's your thoughts on the story, and any particular moments you wanted to call out?
I would say overall, I enjoyed the story, and I actually like the direction that it went. And like you were referring to with Zero Dawn, like one of the main hooks of that game is the mystery behind all the questions about what time period is it, how long has it passed since civilization ended, what happened, why are the machines, why do they look like animals and dinosaurs? I like in one of your episodes you pointed out that everyone on every podcast is saying robot dinosaurs when there's actually like 3 out of the 42 of machines that are actually dinosaurs, and all the others are just regular animals that we're familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah. But so like one of the main so that game is I want to keep playing this game to find out what the hell happened.
Yes.
And the way the marketing kind of pushed this game, it was just something has happened to the world.
Yeah.
And as Aloy, I have to save it. And that's not enough to push you through a game that's 80 hours. And you play the Daunt, and it's way too long.
Yeah.
And
it's similar in Zero Dawn. It's a slow start. It really is a slow start narratively, and before it lets you loose. Like, I can't believe they did that again.
To figure that out.
It's even longer this. Well, again, I was excessively taking time, but I was like, what? They've followed the exact same structure here, when that was seemed like a common critical point of the first one was it's slow to start. Just get through it and you'll be happy. It's like, why are we doing that again?
I think they could have made the Daunt half the size, cut Chain Scrape altogether.
Yeah.
And would anyone have noticed? Although we can't know that because it is in the game. I don't think anyone would have said this game really needed a bit more of a longer tutorial. That would have been in 0 reviews of the game. But then you're kind of going into this game like, all right, I'm in because it looks so beautiful. It's been 5 years. I want to play another one of these games. What is this game about? And then you get about 20-ish hours into the game, maybe 40 for you. I'm not sure when you got to that point.
it was close to 30. It was definitely that sort of time.
Sure. And then you get a copy of Gaia. You go to some facility location, and all of a sudden 3 people who look like they're from some weird future, Jeff Bezos at the helm, come in with a copy of Aloy. Then you're like, okay, I don't care if this is stupid or ridiculous. This game immediately got interesting.
Yeah.
Because now you have more questions.
What is going on?
And then that's what the hell is going on? I did not expect, did you expect?
No.
I knew the second they appeared that, they're from the Odyssey. Because in the beginning of the game, they foreshadow that with telling you all this information about the ship had exploded. They left Earth, and okay, the ship didn't explode. Yes. But I was still surprised. Like, how did you feel in that moment? I was like, what?
Yeah, no, I was sitting there and I
like this.
I was taken aback for sure. And it took me a little while to come around to the idea. I was like, have they jumped the shark here? But you're right. From what went from a fairly run-of-the-mill, let's just get the AI and save the Earth, I was like, there's something else here. And I don't know how I felt about seeing Beta at the time. I was like, okay, how many Aloys, or how many Elizabeths are there? She's not an Aloy clone.
Right.
It's a clone of Elizabeth. And I was like, what are we going to do here? But once I kind of got out of that mission, and because it gets quite frantic after that, you're immediately thrown into like a battle with that. I can't remember that guy's name, that fucking idiot. But
Eric.
Eric, yeah, the
Yeah.
horrible bastard.
Yeah.
And then you've got to escape from the complex, whilst the spectres are hunting you down, the sort of futuristic and Zenith type machines that have been built. And then you pass out and Val finds you, etc. Once that had happened, I was like, okay, this is... I do want to know what's going on here. And you're right, in hindsight, very obvious, because they foreshadow all this with the whole going to the Odyssey. And what I did like, it's because I've played the original so recently, there's a lot of callbacks to the Odyssey on the original, about how it blew up and went wrong.
That's the stuff I don't remember. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah.
they did plan it out. I remember hearing something about the writer, like, no, we didn't finish the game and say, like, what the hell are we doing? Like, they thought about this far in advance, or at least that's what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's presented as they're all dead in the first game, so they could have just changed their mind and said, "Oh, we could just," because essentially they've faked the demise of that ship so they can just ride off. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like I remember the Saw series constantly sort of changing its lore, going back in time and readjusting things. But I felt like it worked quite well for Forbidden West, and definitely, as you said, gave it such an intriguing hook. But even before that, the first part where I was like, oh, sort of shook awake in terms of paying attention was the embassy ambush from Regala and her troops, where she literally kills everyone apart from Aloy and Val. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. All those, well, not everyone actually. There's a couple of survivors. But there's that, what's that? I'm doing what that guy said on Sacred Singles. I'm forgetting the names. The guy that's the marshal from Hekiro, who was a Akaja beforehand. Can't remember his name. I'll look it up in a second. But there's a really interesting point where you can talk to him and get his backstory. And me being a stickler for, finding out what people are doing, I have to do every dialogue option. And there's actually a point in there where it says, "Tell me later." So at that point, when I saw that, you just assume, well, I'll be able to speak to him later. If you choose that option, he dies in that moment, so you don't get to hear about his story. And I was like, oh, and it was quite brutal. I was like, wow, that kind of shook me awake, and I was like, okay, this is where the game's kind of really starting for me. And it coincides with getting out of the dorm, which is good.
Can I tell you one thing particularly about that character is you kind of like you're going to meet all these people, right, for the embassy meeting. And you basically just go to the side and talk to him for like 15 minutes. I'm like, all right, this guy is clearly important. And looking at his character model, I thought what was going to happen is this guy is a clone of Ted Farrow because he looks like him.
Yes.
And then in when he gets killed, quote unquote, he gets a spear kind of like in his armor and he gets pulled off screen.
Yes.
Like they didn't show him die. Classic. Movie 101, if they don't actually show the person die on screen, they might be alive. So I was convinced that he was going to come back as like a Ted Farrow clone, and then there'd be some strange kind of relationship between an Elizabeth clone and I was kind of disappointed that wasn't the case. Like I was waiting for it in like hour 50, and I'm like, oh wait, no, I guess that guy just died. I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah. No, it's Fashav.
Actually, but later, I went to a town or a village, and I saw a guy that I think he had the same face. I'm like, oh, maybe that wasn't Ted Farrow. Maybe I just figured that he looked like him. But how about like where the Zenith story eventually goes? So we're introduced to these characters. We learn that not only did the Odyssey not explode, but they actually did colonize another world that's similar to Earth. But it's not like the 15th generation. It's the same people that have figured out like some weird techie pharmaceuticals that make them, and they're coming back to Earth to supposedly repopulate, but they want to wipe out all like the tribes and stuff and start over. Like, I don't know, like, how did you feel about all that stuff?
Yeah, to be honest, I had assumed like it was like you said, it was just descendants from the Odyssey, which obviously
Yeah.
in real life makes more sense. But they chose to go down the route of it being they'd come up with a way to extend their life. Seems indefinitely. It doesn't seem like any of them are aging particularly badly. If I look that good after a few thousand years, I'll be really happy. I think I would have perhaps preferred the Descendants approach because it felt like just a bit too on the nose, and it is sci-fi, so anything is kind of possible at this point. It's kind of kicked the door open now for the franchise. I'm like, where else could they go? But I didn't think it was necessarily a bad call to have them being the original people. But I just can't get in the mindset of someone that's lived for thousands of years. Like, how are you even functioning normally and even being able to relate to anything anyone's saying anymore?
And they don't explore that enough, I don't think.
No.
Like, we're not made to live for that long.
No.
And I think living for that long could really do something to your psyche as a part, good or bad, right?
Yes.
And they don't explore that section at all. The second the three show up and they drop the bomb of like, oh, okay, there's the Zenith crew that colonized another world are back and they have a clone of Elizabeth. Then they fuck off for like 30 hours. Like, I didn't see him for 30 hours. And then you sit in front of Carrie-Anne Moss and all she does is like give you a giant exposition dump for like 20 minutes. I'm like, there's no other way you could have drip fed this to me through side quests or some story missions.
Yeah.
Like, so I remember I was sitting there and I'm doing whatever. And I'm like, 20 hours in, I'm like, where is the next mission where I come across that, like, what the fuck are those people doing? They show up and then they leave. Later they do explain it, but it's just kind of like they didn't utilize them enough. And also what you were saying is I think it would be a better idea if it was the descendants of the initial. So imagine all the billionaires of the world colonize another planet. Their culture, generations past, would be completely different to anything that is happening in this post-apocalyptic world on Earth. And I think that would have been interesting to explore, like, who the hell they have become as a human race that has basically lived on a separate place. And none of that is explored. And all those characters just die. Like, they show up and then Carrie-Anne Moss tells you everything that you want to know in this terrible exposition. It's like, don't tell. But they couldn't find a way to interestingly wove into the story. And then Jeff Bezos dies immediately without you even talking to him. They all die.
They all die. Yeah, that's the thing. They all die just quite
and then,
quickly in quick succession.
The only thing you know about the colony or Zenith or anything like that is just like a third party through Carrie-Anne Moss. I don't remember her name. She's Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I don't know. I think they squandered the possibilities with interacting with the Zenith people a little bit towards the end. Like, you spend way too much time talking, like, helping or figuring out how to solve the trials and tribulations of all these tribes that is like they start blending together. I don't know what separates them, but it's always go here and yeah. Oh, my cousin got lost in the woods. Can you help him? Like, why is the 40th side quest the same thing? Like do something more that explores the Zenith. Include them in more of the story instead of those points. So I kind of thought that they could have done that. I felt that was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned about the big expedition dump, because there's obviously that scene where she talks you through the art and all that stuff as well.
I like the art part. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, but that's like you say, it's like a 20-minute kind of thing where you sit down at the table and everything's explained to you just very literally there and then. You kind of find everything out. There's no like breadcrumbs that are kind of left. But they do that in the original. Like, you go to these, you go to like facilities to go and collect whatever you're after, and then in there you find voice logs and holograms, and you're in there for like 40 minutes whilst the game is telling you all the important information. And when I came away from the original, that was the first thing the one thing I was definitely critical upon was like, could they find a better way of communicating that in game in some interesting way, rather than several times just going to a location, being stuck in a horrible. They all look the same, the facilities in the first one. Like after a while, they're all dingy and
Yeah.
horrible, same colour scheme, etc. And then they tell you exactly what's happened and whatnot. And I was like, okay, I'm interested in what you're saying, but the way you're doing it, and they do that here. Albeit they kind of do it in a one sort of concentrated dump almost. You know, you're not typically going to too many facilities to find out the information. But it's the same issue. Like you could easily, considering how long the game is and how many other quests there are, you could weave that into a more compelling kind of quest-driven narrative way of relaying it to the player, rather than just sitting at a table, you know, having breakfast and talking about this quite incredible story that she's about to tell you.
Right. And I can forgive the first game a little bit because all those people are dead. So the only way to
Yes.
find out this information is through the holograms and the data points and the audio files and stuff. There's no one there to explain it to you. They're gone. But in this game, they actually have people there. It's not just data points. So find an interest. I'm not a writer. I don't get paid to do that. You just find an interesting way, a more interesting way to relay that information to the audience instead of like a question wheel, 40, 50 hours into the game.
Yeah.
Overall, I liked the angle they took with that stuff. It opens the game up to do more interesting things than just help tribes, because we already know what happened to the world. So I do like that stuff. But yeah, I think they missed out on some opportunities to do something more interesting.
Yeah. Do you feel like they've left it in a good position in terms of a follow-up, which we're ultimately going to get? Because, you know, we've got this, we find out at the very end of the game that there's I mean, I'm struggling to keep up with exactly what it is, but it's some sort of AI full of the consciousness or the thoughts of all these Bezos millionaire type people that's now coming to wipe out the earth. I think that's the general layman's view of it. But that's kind of like they're basically setting up the third and what I can only assume is going to be the final game in Aloy's story. Who knows whether they take it worldwide, and there's other ways to explore this. But what do you feel about that little? I guess it was them trying to twist or shock, but it felt, in my opinion, I was a bit like, this feels. I mean, you're using the word nemesis for one, which I just think of Resident Evil, and I think how crazy they get with their stories. I'm like, this is almost mirroring that now. We've got this madness happening right at the end of the game.
Like you've lived for 1,000 years. I'm sure there's some billionaire writer somewhere in that group of people, and the best name you could come up with for what this thing is Nemesis. It's so on the, like, please think of, what is this, Xbox with their development teams being like definitive article plus noun, like the Coalition or Halo. It's the Flood.
Yes.
Like you got to stop. You can't. It can't be. It can't be. I mean, Golden Axe 2 had the best final boss name ever, Death Adder. But that's an arcade game from like the 90s, so you can forgive it. It's 2022. Please think of a better name of your the final boss of your game other than Nemesis. I think it was I don't like it's the real bad guy is something that has never been foreshadowed this entire game.
Correct.
And they introduce it in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate that. Have you ever seen Transcendence with Johnny Depp? He basically, his mind gets downloaded into the internet and he becomes basically like a god, and he uses nanomachine to heal people's eyesight. I don't know. It's like kind of what happens in this. Like all I could think about was Johnny Depp in this terrible movie Transcendence when Nemesis popped up. But like, sure, fine. Take the name out of it. I'm interested to see where it goes. But I don't know if I appreciate them at the end of the game. It's like it wasn't earned. This final reveal.
Yeah. It's I do have a bit of an issue with that, because, like you say, it's just not. It was kind of like, ha ha, we tricked you.
We're smart enough. Like, give me a hint somewhere.
Yeah, it's like would carry
Silence is sitting there. He's like, actually, I knew everything the whole time. Then why didn't you tell me?
And Carrie Ann Moss, it's like, if you really want to get back on the ship and go off with Aloy, tell her everything. If you really want to earn her trust, don't at the end go, right, we're going to change what we're going to do. We're going to, want you to come with us, and then don't be annoyed when she rejects that proposal and you have to try and fight her in a Spectre Primal or whatever it's called.
Yeah, stop spending your time trying to impress me with your little dates and nuts platter in your fucking house and that giant table so you can tell me about how much you loved Elizabeth. Maybe tell me the pertinent information about what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
That's kind of a gamble on her part, really.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm going to keep this sliver of information till the very end, and then gamble that she's going to agree with me to leave Earth.
Yes.
And you think you want to ease that in there so she's not fucking knocked off her feet? Like, oh, okay. This didn't work, so I'm going to kill you. By the way, I've prepared a Spectre Prime back here, so
yeah.
Even though I love you, I'm going to smash your body to bits because you didn't take my initial offer. Like, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm kind of, it sets up a third game. We're going to have something to do, and it's clearly going to be Nemesis arriving on Earth and I guess corrupting machines again, and it's causing all sorts of mutations, etc., etc. All the cauldrons will start pumping out horrible machines, and there'll be some other bumps along the way. Silence will clearly have some part to play in either helping or seemingly trying to hinder Aloy's progress. Because one of the I do want to explore more about, and maybe we'll move into like the character pieces now, but I want to explore more about Aloy. Like, 'cause in the first game, it's as much as the game is about finding out what happened. Like, there's a lot of the stories focused on Aloy trying to discover who she is, her origins, how she kind of fits in, because she's grown up shunned by the Nora tribe and all the Mother Earth bollocks that comes with that. And that's quite interesting, a character moment. Whereas in this one, there's an interesting spin in that she's now, she's a hero after the first game, so she's kind of earned that status, and she's trying to live up to that status and feels like her, the greater need of Earth and the world is in the prime spot rather than her own personal viewpoints or what she feels like she wants to do. But I do want to get to a point where she starts having relationships with people and like finding out what Aloy wants as a person, because at the moment she's just kind of turning into like generic hero who saves everyone and everything, and the only real conflict she kind of has in this one is about Beta, and she doesn't like her to start with, and then over time she kind of understands where she's coming from. But like, there's always they keep insinuating that the Sun Chief Avad is like fancies Aloy. Like he makes a proposition earlier in the game for her to stay over, and you're just like, no, I've got to go and reboot this AI and save the world. But I want to get to a point where Aloy feels like she can at least entertain proposals like that, and we explore kind of how she's developed as an adult. But with Nemesis bearing down and going to destroy the Earth, I just don't see how they're going to squeeze that in.
No, she's Batman. She can't. She can't settle down.
No,
she dedicates her whole life to helping others, for better or for worse.
That's what I would like to see. But any other bits on the actual story piece that you wanted to mention, and then maybe we'll talk about some characters that stood out and.
Story. No, not really. I mean, overall, I did like. They went left in a direction I didn't expect.
Yeah.
So. That surprising part of it I really did like. I think they squandered the idea of the Zenith, but that could always come back in a more interesting way.
Yeah.
Right? As you said, like they might have had ideas where to take the third game, but then they change their mind, or they hear fan theories and they might incorporate that type of stuff. They could always change that stuff. Like overall, I liked it. Even with some of they didn't explore some of the sci-fi stuff as much as I thought they would, but overall I thought it was good. I'm glad that they found another carrot on the end of the stick for me to keep pushing through that game to figure out like what's the mystery, what's going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
agreed. In terms of like characters, I do something that I feel like they don't. There's potential to have made this much better, but they don't quite execute it as well as I would have hoped for. And it's this whole idea that it's a bit arbitrary that you've got a base in this game that you could go back to, but along the way you accrue companions and allies, And like the classic example for me is Mass Effect, where your ship mates, you become friends of them. That's one of the most interesting things about the game, is exploring the dynamics within that. You kind of get a very light touch version of that here. You do like 1 or 2 quests for each of them potentially, and I think that's linked to trophies and whatnot. But they don't quite fulfill what I feel like there's large potential to have there. And you kind of got this inner circle of people, Varl and Erend and Zoe and Cthulhu, who I really liked. He's like my favourite Cthulhu, the one-armed dude. He's just like...
Yeah.
I find him really interesting. What did you make of this kind of inner circle of characters that Aloy surrounds herself in and allies? And we'll talk about Silence separately, because he kind of comes in... He's just a bit of a weirdo and sort of fleets in and out of the story. But this concept of her having, at least in this game, some form of backup... should you need to call upon it, whereas the first game it's very much one-woman job. I'm out here on my own.
Overall, I like the cast, but I think, as you were referring to, I think them creating characters that you know a lot about and care a lot about, it's one of the weakest parts of the game. And I'm not even going to lie, but it has been 5 years since I've played Horizon Zero Dawn. When Eren starts talking about how his sister died, I don't remember that from the first game.
Yeah. And the reason why you don't remember that is because even in the original, they fuck about with it. Like, you presume she's dead, and then you find out she's not dead. She's been held captive, and then she dies anyway. And you're like, okay, right, so she's dead.
I have zero recollection of that. It took me until they mentioned that he had been with Aloy throughout the first game, like Varl. I don't even remember who that is. This might just be me. He's
in like 3 quests.
Is he?
And he's there at the end.
Yeah.
But that's not like the whole... He wasn't there the whole journey, like, by her side. Like, he's there at the beginning and at the end,
and he's a cool character in this game. He's like a super nice guy. And, his relationship with Zoe kind of... when they meet and they get to know each other and blah, blah. Like, that stuff's all fine, but there is something about the game. Like, if you're... I mean, this might be unfair to compare it to Mass Effect, because that's one of the best examples of an awesome crew of different personalities and memorable characters, and specifically memorable character side quests with especially in Mass Effect 2. I mean, this... okay, let me put it this way. When Varl died, I was like, that sucks.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel anything. It's supposed to be sad, but they don't develop the characters enough. Even Eren, who I remember from the first game, kind of. I don't know, they just don't do enough with the characters. And maybe that's slightly because Aloy has such a standoffish nature. She's got the weight of the world on her shoulders.
She's a weirdo, let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. She's a weirdo. Like, you're not going to invite her around for dinner, are you? If you're like trying to show off your social circle, you'll be like...
Dude, what would she'd be talking about saving the world, and it'd be like a bit of a ludonarrative dissonance, that boring, like, what are you doing here? Like, I like how you have months before the blight just like completely ruins the world, but like, all right, I'm in San Francisco now. Let me fuck off back to Colorado. Yeah. And then I'll come, like, wait, how long is that? How are you getting there so quick? Like, whatever. It's an open world. I'm easily... I'll poke fun at it, but and forgive it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, they're okay. Like, how did you feel about the characters overall?
No, I tend to agree with it. And we say it's not fair to compare it to, like, Titans in that area, like Mass Effect, but that's what we're shooting for here. Like,
I suppose so.
Yeah. We want things to be as good as they can. There's definitely room for improvement there. Absolutely. Like, I was surprised when I initially played the game. I was like, okay, I don't think you're going to have to need much knowledge of the first one other than the basic cliff notes. The more and more I played it, I was like, there's so many callbacks, there's so many references, there's so many, like, not even secondary characters, like tertiary characters that are popping up and playing a role for a significant amount of time in this game, that if you haven't played it in the last 6 months that I have, this is all just going to shoot over your head. Like you said with Eren's sister, like, that's completely understandable. Most people will feel the same. So they could have done a much better job of bridging those characters for sure. And then in terms of what they do with them in this particular one, yeah, I mean, it's okay. But like you said, Varl dying is probably the big... That's what, is that the only real big character death? I think it is, in terms of like Aloy's crew. That's like meant to make you feel aggrieved.
Well, I mean, Regala dies at the end unless you kill her yourself, but I mean, she's
I mean, that's
Just
another thing. Regala
whatever.
is just like this name. Very rarely do you interact with her.
She's never in the game. Yeah,
No.
It's the same issue with Zenith. Like, this game has so many side quests.
Yes.
Do a side quest where you're constantly tracking Regala, and at the end of the side quest, she slips through your fingers somehow.
Yes.
So when it comes to the actual fight with her, and then you beat her and you can choose her fate, you know a bit more about her, and like there's just so much they could, like, they have all the funds in the world from so, like, just figure it out. Like, write better side quests. That'll come up later. I just, yeah, you just don't get to know these characters that much. And again, OTAPs with your home base.
Yeah.
You go back to the base, and it's just this giant wheel of talking points where they can't fit these characters that you're supposed to care about into the side quests or the world themselves. So you just sit there and ask them how they're doing. But like the topics will be like training, and you just keep and there's like 5 things they're saying at the same time. It's like, what am I doing? It's updating based on how many side quests or how long you've been away from the base.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is like, oh, you know, the base is changing. Zoe's kind of adding like plain song elements to the base, and more things are being added, and it's building up this place to make it more of like a home, right?
Yeah.
But just going to that base and just having the small talk, I just see again, it's like a peek behind the curtain. Like, I know what they're doing, but it's not working the way they think it should, or it's at least what they aimed for. And to getting to know these characters or forming more of a bond with them, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're right to try and make you care more about these characters and, you know, get to know them more. But the execution just wasn't there. At least for me. It's fine, but, you know, it's not groundbreaking. It's not exceptional, and it serves its purpose. I will say the one thing I did find consistently impressive was how much the game knows your progress, who you spoke to, what you've seen, what you have, what you haven't done, and how that's referenced in conversations and how they adjust. Like, there's so many times when you play a big game like this where you talk to someone and they say, right, you need to go to the jungle on the west and the forbidden cave, and then your character goes, oh, what's the forbidden cave? And you're like, I've been there. I've been there. Honestly, I've done it. I've done what you're asking me. For most part, in Forbidden West, they do a really good job of the game being aware of what you have and haven't seen, and that adjusting. I was really, and even in the post game, like, one of the things that drives me crazy is I'm always reluctant to leave side quests until post game, because sometimes contextually it doesn't match up. Like, what if the world ends? It's like, well, that couldn't have happened. But in this instance, like, all the side characters sort of go off back to where they, you know, were homed before. And then when you speak to them to reinitiate the side quests, they reference that they are there now and that they are present in that area, not that they're acting like it was before you've just done the final mission. So there's a level of detail in that sense that I appreciate. But in terms of just the character and narrative stuff, there's a lot that can be improved there. I will say that what bailed it out a lot was, I was really impressed with the facial animations were really impressive. Certainly on the first one, they are just like dead-eyed, bad lip syncing, bad everything, like static, just one shots that cut back to back and like that. There's a lot more thought and effort being put into just the facial animations, the way the characters express themselves as they're moving, and just the direction in terms of camera work and whatnot when you're speaking to characters, when you're, you know, accepting side quests. And I felt like that helped cover over some of the more mundane parts of it, because when it's mundane and the characters look bored as well, it's like, well, how can I even be interested at all in what's being said here? But that's a massive improvement. Was the facial animations. They look a bit weird sometimes. There's some weird stuff going on with, like, everyone's seen the screenshots of Aloy's face when they've doing things like that. But for the most part, I was really impressed with the work they've done on the animation side of things. It was a massive upgrade, especially for a game this big. Like, most of the stuff they've put effort in. There's a few bits where you can say they've cut corners on some perhaps lower priority stuff, but most of the main stuff was, well, I felt really well done.
Yeah, and you pretty much said everything that I wanted to say about the facial animations and that, but one particular moment where I realized like what this game is doing something different with facial animations than any other game I've ever played up until this point is when you are in not Chain Scrape, but it's the not Blight Town. What is it called? Here I'm making fun of that guy. I couldn't remember names,
I've
and
done
I'm doing
it
the same
already.
thing.
It's fine.
That's why you don't that's why you don't call people out. Barren Light.
Barren Light, yes.
When you're in Barren Light, there's a point where Aaron makes it there, and he's sitting on the back of like a cart, and he's drunk.
Yes, yes.
And you start talking to him.
Yes.
There's no, I don't know what it is, but that specific moment, there's nothing before or after that that wowed me as much as that particular interaction with Aaron. It was like borderline. It starts climbing back up the uncanny valley into realism.
Yes.
And like, are we at that point where we're gonna get, the Unreal Engine and we, with the Matrix, that little demo, which I haven't played yet, but that was that moment looking at the character animations, facial animations rather, of Aaron in that conversation specifically, or where I was actually pretty taken aback, like, wow, this looks really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the game looks great. Great direction. But yeah, it's a beautiful looking game.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. It's one of the best looking games of the generation for sure.
Yeah. Just one more thing on like that side of things, and then we'll move into like the the game's look and perhaps performance and etc. But I felt like for the most part the performances amongst the main cast, secondary cast, are all really good as well. There's some excellent voice work in this, and that just adds that the voice obviously brings it to life, but to have the facial animations and whatnot. When I first played it, the first few hours, I gave like really early impressions, and I was like, the facial animations are really good, but they're an improvement. The more I played the game, the more I was just like fixated on. I could almost like feel what they were thinking just by watching their face. It was so odd. Not every time, but in certain moments, you could just see like anguish or confusion or frustration before the words came out of their mouth. And as more and more the game went on, I was like, for a game this size to be doing something that well, that's really, really impressive. And the voice work, I felt, was excellent across the board. And that's important with a game with so much dialogue and so much narrative beats to it. But you alluded to, this is a great looking game. We've got two options to play this: a performance and a frame rate, a frame rate mode, and then a resolution or fidelity mode, whatever people want to call those. What did you take for this? Are you a 60 FPS whore, or are you I'm happy with 30 FPS slop as long as it looks 4K?
30 FPS slop. Here's the thing, OTAPs. Never been a computer guy. Didn't grow up with them, so I've never put any importance on frame rate per se. But the first time I even was able to see 60 FPS was not Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the second Tomb Raider game.
Rise of
Rise of the Tomb Raider on my PlayStation 4 Pro, and you can't go back after that.
No, you can't.
Like, you can't. I don't care how many extra blades of grass might pop up in the screen, unless you have a TV side by side comparing fidelity. There's no way that you can choose anything other than frame rate. I remember I don't know, I've heard people talk about like, oh no, I want the high fidelity, so I played it in 30 FPS. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you gaining from, like,
they must
I don't know.
They must be people that don't even try the frame rate mode, because if you switch to it and then try and go back, you'll be like, whoa, this is the only game I've made the exception for was Guardians of the Galaxy, because that game, that's the only time I've noticed it looking materially worse. Like usually when, like you said, when you first switch it, you're like, oh, I can see it, but it doesn't matter. Whereas that, it was distracting me, and I kept going back and forth, which is the worst thing to do. You really just, if you are going to go for 30, do not even switch 60 on. Trust me, because you'll you'll regret it.
You ruin your life.
You will.
Yeah.
But for this it was performance, frame rate mode all the way for me, and it looked. The first thing when I turned it on, I think it boots in fidelity mode, but I switched it to performance, and I was stunned at how good the game looked just from a graphical point of view. Like the vista you get in that opening sort of little, quite a linear mission, but it's, you can see the jungle and whatnot. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a looker.
Let me put it this way. So Control is one of my favorite games of the past several years.
Great game.
I played on a PlayStation 4 Pro. Not a great port of that game. It's rough, especially going in and out of menus. It's 30 FPS. And I was able to download it on my PlayStation 5. And the trophies don't pop. I can't just download it and get the platinum that I got on the PlayStation 4.
Would you do that? Or would you feel like you have to earn them again, just as a side excursion here?
So in the past 3 years, I've gone from, because at the end of the year they kind of do the wrap up on looking back on your PlayStation year type of thing.
Yeah,
it was I went from 6 platinum trophies to 12 to last year was 21. Now I would not do that, OTAPs, but if in December of December 25th. Around Christmas, maybe?
On Christmas Day,
during my break. On
break.
Christmas Day, yeah, in my room instead of hanging out with my friends and family. If I was at 21 trophies, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was sweating that, clearly I'm going up. It's almost exponential at this point. I can't do 21 trophies 2 years in a row. So in that case, I might do the double pop, the double dip.
Fair enough.
But in this case, I just played through Control again, and I got the platinum trophy completely separately from the ground up because the game looked so great in 60 FPS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do that to yourselves. Don't play in 30.
No, that's kind of my recommendation. There's even Biff, who comes on the podcast very occasionally. He's one of those people who just doesn't even check the settings, so he's never aware of it. And I was like, "Oh, what are you playing on?"
I'm actually fine with that, really.
Yeah. But I said, "What are you playing on?" And he went, "I don't know." And I was like, "Oh, if you go into the settings," and he was like, "Which setting?" And I'm like, oh. So I'd done the groundwork for him. I was like, "Right, I'll do it for you. Go into settings."
Are you talking to your grandfather?
Honestly, sometimes with him, it feels like it. Fuck me. And I said, "Oh, switch it over to performance mode." And he switched it on. And 5 minutes later, he went, looks muddy, looks like shit. And I was like, "All right, okay, you've clearly noticed it." 15 minutes later, I've turned it back to fidelity mode. It's like playing in mud. I can't play this anymore. You've ruined it. And then he went back to performance mode. And I was like, I've done you a favour. And he was like, well, now I'm going to switch it every game. I'm like, but you should. You should explore that. Anyway. So yeah,
That's great.
It's a great looking game though. I guess I always, The Last of Us is a fantastic looking game, 1 and 2 for their times especially, and even 2 now is superb. But I am consistently impressed with open world games that can compete and be in a similar ballpark or at least similar league status of perhaps more linear, reduced scope games, because this game is fucking huge. We spoke about the hours we've put into it, not just in terms of how many quests there are, but the amount of terrain and bits and pieces there are to see.
Well, how much is being rendered on screen at any given time, and the game doesn't slow down, and there might be pop-in, but barely noticeable. It's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And actually, if the devs heard me say pretty impressive, they'd be like, "Are you do you know what I had to do to make it pretty impressive?" I don't just X that pretty out of there and just say it's fucking amazing. Totally, it is a spectacle. It's a beautiful, beautiful looking game.
Particularly on the environment front, I don't think there's anything that comes close, really.
It's hard to make a jungle feel and look like a jungle,
yeah,
because there's so much foliage. And in that specific area, the main jungle area, that's when you start getting closer to the San Francisco, the coastline.
Yeah,
a bit southwest. It's great. Looks beautiful. And I love the breadth of the variety of environments as well.
Makes you wonder what they could do if and when they uncouple from the PS4, because obviously I know people say it doesn't affect the game, but I'm like, yeah, but it lowers the scope somewhat. I'm not saying it changes it materially, but you have this
It has
lower
to, yeah.
you have this lower baseline game that you've got to consider. And even if you just look at it from a resource perspective, it's taking up time, blah blah blah. I do wonder what they'll do when they create a true sort of current gen game, like how much better that potentially could look. But even for Forbidden West in 2022, it really is stunning, even though it's cross gen. Like,
How good is Nemesis going to look? Whatever that means. Yeah, on
AI that's
PlayStation 5. Yeah.
coming to chase everything down. But yeah, environments are top drawer. I felt like the machines, they were always well designed from the original, and they kind of kept that up. And we'll get into the new versus old perhaps later on. Character models are a massive upgrade from the original, so definitely improvements across the board there. One thing I did notice, and this is more of a technical issue than a game looking good or bad, is it definitely felt like the code was not as clean on this one, and my opinion may well be skewed in a way because I've just replayed Horizon Zero Dawn in the last 6 months, which is in its objectively its best state technical wise. They're not gonna be patching that game anymore. They've ironed out as many of the bugs that they feel that they need to do. This was a day one purchase. This was something that I played through at launch. So there's kind of always I wonder whether when I originally played Zero Dawn whether I had similar amount of issues. That's just been erased because I've replayed it recently. But I definitely
It's possible. I don't remember. I don't recall having issues with the game in 2017.
yeah.
But yeah, it seemed cleaner than this one.
Because I'm not saying it's bad, but there was definitely noticed more consistent issues. Like especially like early on. Like I remember there's one that we all I think ran into where you'd have a big battle, and then the frame rate would just drop. Like it would just be like stuttering, and I was like, the only way to fix that was to reload the game. At least I found anyway. And it wasn't like the game was struggling under its own, the amount of load it's put on the PS5. It's like, no, this is a bug that's just crapping the game out. Like, it's not occasionally doing this. It was just, I remember I played it for like 10 minutes in that mode and it just got worse and worse and worse until it was like 10 frames per second and Aloy was just darting around everywhere. But that's just one example of some of the other bits and pieces I had. Did you have any major issues with this in terms of...
I actually didn't.
Technical.
I didn't have many. I didn't have any hard crashes. The only frame rate issues I had were, and I looked this up later. It was specifically tied to after you get through that ambush, the Regala ambush, and you finally make it into quote unquote the Forbidden West. There's the Michael Cera looking scrapper guy.
Yeah,
and he introduces you to the scrapper quests. There was legitimately a bug where any of the quests tied to the scrapper, the frame rate would drop to like single digits.
Oh.
And I looked it up, and that's what that was.
So that was a common. It was just related to that quest line, was it?
It was related to the Michael Cera scrapper quest.
That's
so
correct.
That might have been what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yes, it was on one of those quests. I was going to
and then,
get a herd of watchers or whatever it was. Actually, it wasn't.
So
watchers.
once I found out, well, I got worried. I'm like, oh no, like what's going on here? And then I realized it is his quest specifically. I just stopped that, and then maybe like 3 days later they patched it, and then I went back to him. And they was totally fine. So frame rate issues, that was the only thing. The only other bugs that I ran into other than Aloy not climbing what should be climbable consistently throughout the entire fucking game.
User error.
Even though it's highlighted in is with flying enemies, specifically the Sky Drifter, the Stormbird, and the bat.
Yes.
Here I go. I can't remember the names of any of these things. The Dreadwing, the Stormbirds and the Dreadwing. If you hit a weak point, the model will shoot down really quickly.
Yeah.
And if it's already close to the ground, it'll clip through the ground and be stuck under the ground. I actually posted on Twitter where I hit a Stormbird and it disappears. And I'm looking around for it. And then if I tap my focus, because in the focus you can see animals through like hard objects. It was under the ground. It had its feet sticking out, clipping through it, and it was just spinning. Like constantly, as if someone had a basketball on their finger and they were like, or like they were like balancing plates on a stick. It was spinning that quickly, and I had to reload the game about 3 or 4 times, and
Oh,
then in the fifth time it kept happening. I was able to somehow finagle it to where it unclipped itself, and I was able to finish the side quest. But I have no idea what that's about. But other than that, and this it didn't ruin the game for me. This is like specific enemy battle, right? No
yeah.
quests were broken. One time I finished a really difficult battle where I had to fight a bunch of rebels with a behemoth,
Mm,
and there was two characters that after the behemoth fell, I was supposed to talk to them
yes.
to finish the quest. One of the guys got stuck on the side of a mountain, and because you need to have both of them
Yeah.
standing next to each other in order for the quest to progress, I couldn't do it, so I had to like hard cancel out of the game and go back in. But I mean, that's in 80 hours. That's not a lot
Yeah.
considering it's this massive open world game.
Yeah, I don't want to make out like it was a consistent thing. It was definitely more noticeable considering how, especially with Sony games, they're normally pretty clean. Like you don't see. I don't. I personally don't have noticed hardly anything in the other games that I played, but
Like God of War 2018. I don't
yeah, no, absolutely
remember
not.
anything.
Like, I don't know, Machine Strike. I don't even know if we're going to bother talking about that, but there's the tutorial on that bugged out. I sat down in
Really?
Chainscrape to figure out what that game was and couldn't progress. Reloaded and it worked. That was a bit of a strange one. I had like there was one of those scrapper quests where you've got to, I think I had to kill a herd of X machine, and the machine herd didn't appear where it was supposed to, so I couldn't. So I had to,
Really?
I had to reload that. And what had happened is I'd charged through that area to get to the quest, and it had triggered them all to frenzy or whatever, and then they hadn't gone somewhere if they were still there, but it had obviously done something where the AI didn't recognise them as the quest machines anymore. Because when I reloaded it, I went round them, triggered it, went back, and it was those ones that were standing there before. And then I had a buggy like hunting ground quest where I think I fell outside of the arena that just as I finished it, and it didn't log my result.
That happened to me on the Tremor Tusk one with all the claw
The
striders
worst
around.
one. That's the same one.
Drove me nuts. Yeah,
I did it.
like,
I did it first time, you see, and then when I went to retry it, did I do it first? Did I do it second time? Did I fuck? It took me about
No.
8 more times to do it. I was steaming with rage. So I've
That
done
is-
this. I've done it.
That is the most frustrating I've probably been doing anything in a game for quite a while. Aside from the Titanfall 2 bronze trophy where you have to finish the gauntlet in 33.5
Yeah, you did it.
seconds.
You did it.
Yeah, I did do it. But yeah, that Tremor Tusk Claw Strider hunting grounds is insane. Yeah. You got it's like a sumo tournament. If you put your foot out of the ring,
Yeah.
considered you lose.
Yeah.
So
That's that frustrating. Because when that sort of stuff happens, and I always, because there's a trophy tied to it as well, I was like, what if that's fucked up? And I thought I'll just reload because I'll do it first time again. And that's when I got into the cycle of I couldn't do it. And I was like,
well, it was easy, right? It was easy. I did it the first time, so
of course. And then I just could not do it. But no, I think in general it was definitely something that I noticed occasionally, but in 100 plus hours, mostly clean, mostly good. But noticeable issues there. Even like small stuff, like when you go on a story mission with Val and he'll be following you. I was in a cauldron, I think, with him and Zoe, related to one of her quests, and Val stopped following us. Just thought, well, I can't be fucked with this. There's so many doors. I'm sure the exit door is going to be right where I'm standing. I'm just going to wait here. But obviously, this game does the thing that every game does now. When you've got companions, you're having a conversation. You're kind of doing a bit of, narrative beats in there. And because Val's 3 floors away, fucking at the back of the door, you couldn't hear him. It wouldn't even subtitle it. Everyone would just go silent, and then she'd be like, "Stop it, Val!" And I'd be like, "What are you saying?" But
you know, You know, it's something that I did notice with the like I know this is like a headache for devs and like, oh my God, gamers are so entitled or whatever. But in the 2018 Spider-Man game, they like recorded two sets of lines so
Yes.
that if Spider-Man was swinging versus not swinging
Yes.
and whatever, it's immersive and all that. They didn't do that with this game. So if like in mid jump, like Aloy is like climbing all over all this stuff, she's talking as if she's just standing right next to someone. She's not out of breath
Yeah.
or anything like that. And I don't know, this is entitled or whatever, but this is you got all the backing of PlayStation cash behind you.
Yeah.
I don't know, like you can't have Ashley Birch do for specific situations, right? I'm not asking her to record every single line in that game, but like specifically for sections where you know she's going to be climbing stuff. She
Yeah.
can't just be a bit out of. She is breathy that entire game.
Yeah.
She's huffing and puffing and sighing but yeah, she can't be out of breath when she's climbing something. I don't know.
Yeah. Look, if it's a money,
Not,
if it's a money
not
or
the end of the world, but
no, but if it's a money or resource thing, they haven't got time to do it. Fair enough, but perhaps just cut some of the lines about putting stuff in a stash and re-record a few lines where she's out of breath.
yeah.
Don't do 1 million lines of her just talking about the snow melting on her face and things. That stuff can go. You can leave that stuff out. Just record a couple of extra duplicate lines. Yeah, but again,
I better check that. I better check that contract. I better open that contract.
no,
again.
the contract's a
I've read the
fucking riddle
contract.
anyway. There's nothing specific on there. You read those, and I'm like, okay, I get what I'm doing, but it wasn't anything other than what they told me. There's no surprise here. This
I think there was someone that had the idea, like, wouldn't it be cool if you actually had to like go into your inventory and read the thing before you did the thing? And then they're like, actually, that it's not important.
No.
Like, no, but let's like record a line where she's constantly reminding us to check the fucking contract.
yeah,
Whatever.
there we go. But yeah, there are some, or there were, I guess they've done a few patches which definitely fixed. It made the game, like I guess, more stable. I didn't have any crashes either, so
No.
it was it was stable from that perspective. I did have the game suddenly going black when I was. It felt like when I was transitioning zones of the open world. So I'm talking about, so it's like you kind of got where your base is located, sort of in the middle of that section of the map. I was travelling across or near that border, and I was wondering whether in the game it's kind of like the memories caching like both of those areas separately. And because I was straddling that, a couple of times it would just go black for about a second, and I was like, and it would come back, and I was like, oh, that's really strange. But
You know what I don't like, and I'm sure there's obviously a reason that they couldn't change it. That the screen goes black when you quick save at bonfires. What's
yeah,
that about?
not very quick then, is it? You've literally just wasted time.
Yeah, what's this PlayStation 5 talk you've been going on about?
Goddamn SSD.
Yeah, you brought it up, not me. You bring it up, then I get to complain if it doesn't meet my expectations. It's your fault. Don't oversell it.
Let's talk about some quest design, exploration, and how the game is kind of set up for you to explore. What did you feel like there was a major step down from main quests versus side quests? And look, when we say side quests or side activities, we're not going to categorize them the way they do in this game, where you've got a side quest, you've got a main quest, you've got a job, you've got an errand. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I mean, I appreciate the amount of detail it gives you for items and inventory, like use this to upgrade your weapons. Okay, I know not to sell that. This item you can sell. Like, it communicates that. I'm happy with all that stuff. But all this categorization for different activities drove me up the fucking wall after a while. So when we say side quests, it'll be basically anything that's not a main quest, and we'll try and call out the activities as they were, whether it's a a relic or a vista or whatever. But main quest versus like a typical kind of side quest, like a narrative or attempt to be a narrative side quest, because in most games, in open world games, there's a drop off in the quality. Some games do a much better job. The Witcher, for example, they make their side quests really compelling. Did Guerrilla Games get this right in terms of their main quests? What did you think of their involvement in terms of a vehicle for the story, and what you're up to, what you found out, and how that changed the world?
So, I know I've been a bit down on this game. Like overall, I really like this game. Let me preface my statement with
Yeah,
that.
and
But
also the thing with
yeah.
Spoilercast is you inherently just nitpick and nitpick and nitpick. It's just
Right,
the
right.
nature of the way these things work. Like, I could play games that I've loved, but I'll always talk about the stuff that I didn't like or felt could have done better, because no game is perfect, so there's always room for
No.
improvement. So don't feel
So
bad.
I'm going to throw this back to you. From because you played it 6 months ago. From the first Horizon game, is there any side quest that you actually remember? Like what it entailed, the people involved, not main quest. Is there any memorable side quest that you can, off the top of your head, explain to me now? This particular thing happened and it was cool.
I can't remember the characters' names, but there's one.
That's a good start, I guess.
Yeah, but there's one where you meet this. I think he's Karja. He's a Karja like general at an outpost, and essentially the long and short of it is that there's people that have been kidnapped and been killed, and he wants you to kind of go out and find. The long and short of it is you go off and find out that it's him that's orchestrating it all, and you go back and you kill his lieutenant and confront. But no, really, I mean that's. I don't know if that's necessarily a criticism of the game. My memory's pretty awful to start with, but I feel like I
how
can.
about Forbidden West?
The only ones really that I care to remember, because what I choose to do is I think about stuff that sticks with me, and the other stuff I throw away. But I like Costello's arm mission, and the companion ones for me felt like I understood why, like Zoe's, trying to make those fucking triceratops come back to life and plow the ground or whatever those vegans want. I don't know what they're fucking doing, eating seeds all the time.
Yeah, Triceratops, goblins.
Goblin.
It's all the same thing.
It's all the same. It's all the same thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say there was particularly a load of quests that were compelling or. And here's the thing: they've got a choice system in this game, or seemingly like this, where you choose to be assertive or emotional or logical. So they clearly think that that's what people want to do. They want to be able to have some input into the game. I think you use it 3 times in the entire game.
Yeah.
3 times.
Doesn't go
It's a handful at most, and none of the side quests utilize this, or very rarely. And there's no kind of like grey area. There's no part where you get to kind of. It's all very cut and dry, black and white. Good, bad. You do this, etc., etc. But yeah, from memory, the companion quests were probably the only ones that I feel like I would care to remember. To be honest, the rest were okay. There's a guy actually. I think he's in one of the lowland bases, and you go and fight. It might be one of the ones you was referring to, but you said it's their brother, where the dad goes off, and turns out he's like senile. And he's been going off and having issues, reliving like a war or a battle that it take. I quite like that one. That's because it was the premise around it I found interesting. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. And I don't know if you need the to it. Like this, we could focus on fleshing out other bits.
Yeah, I think the side quests are one of my biggest issues with this game. Because, well, also take this with a grain of salt, because I didn't even know Erin not only had a sister but that she died. I didn't remember that from the first game, so maybe it's just my memory, as you were saying about yourself. So, speaking of senile, I don't know, mid-30 somethings that can't fucking remember what they had for breakfast. Maybe don't listen to either of us. However, like when I think of side quests, at least memorable stuff in more recent years, like there are games where I can just pick out things like, hey, like Witcher 3. And here's the thing, like I'm not knocking the game for all the side quests are based around the combat. So they chalk up some idea like, oh, my cousin went out on a hunt 2 weeks ago and he hasn't come back. We think he's in this area. Can you try to find him? You go there. There's bodies, and then you end up in some sort of fight, and then you come back and you get some reward for it. Like if you insert combat into everything, that's fine, because in all the Yakuza 6 side quests, it ends in you crushing some heads together. But
Yeah.
that's not the memorable part of the fight,
No.
or of the side quests rather. Um, the memorable part is the ridiculous characters, or the memorable characters, or the situation you're in with a tower full of mice, and the decisions that you make at the end of those quests, not just these arbitrary decisions that pop up 3 times during the game.
Yeah.
And one of my issues with it is like there is no side quest like that in this game. Every side game, it's a means to an end. I
Mm.
do them because at the end I'm going to get a weapon or I'm going to get some experience towards my skill tree. I
Yeah.
don't remember anything that I do. And I don't care if every single side quest ends with you killing some machines because that is great. I mean, that's the main hook of the game. It feels great. It's awesome. Put me in some interesting situations, but just I don't remember any of these tribes people. But I mean, do you know what do you know what I'm talking about? Like there are so many open world games off the top of my head where I can at least pick out 2 or 3 memorable side quests that are about the characters involved and not the combat, and they're not just a means to an end. And
Mm.
this game has the backing of Sony, as we're talking about. It's 2022. Did these people not play The Witcher 3 or any like they've so much history to look at side quests that are not even tied to combat per se either. Like look at some of the stuff in The Last of Us Left Behind, the DLC.
Mm.
That's a game that looks at the main mechanics of the game are like you throw bricks and
Yeah.
you stealth and you shoot shit.
Yeah.
What is something we can do with the mechanics without creating new mechanics that we can do that doesn't have to do with actually shooting shit? It's like, oh, how about a squirt gun fight with your
Yeah.
friend in an abandoned um, mall,
Yeah.
or you do a challenge of like trying to blow out all the window or smash all the windows of a car in
Yes.
this first floor of the mall with bricks, or you play hide and seek, or the snowball fight
Yeah,
in
in
The
The
Last
Last
of
of
Us
Us 2.
2 that
Yeah,
teaches you,
exactly.
yeah, like you have so much. Why can you take the core mechanics of this game and do something other than the combat? Or if it's going to end in combat, then find an interesting story to tell me that's not just find this fucker that got lost in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't get it.
I think part of the issue is that I think there's maybe like one or two in there that I've kind of vaguely referenced, but what happens for me anyway is that I've only got so much room to keep remembering stuff, and there's so many quests, there's so many side quests. Like it's like, do we need that many? Could we not just have? Could you not just maybe extend a smaller amount of quests to make them longer, make them more interesting, and do it that way rather than going? Because it felt like here they're just trying to pump numbers, like bang, 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 bang. And what happens is over time, especially the way my brain operates, it has to push stuff out. Even if I felt like I found it interesting, I've got to go and find some fucking seeds from somewhere because someone died, and we're gonna. I actually quite like that idea, but you know, the act of just going there and finding like someone's died and then killing the machine and coming back is a very common issue that you go and resolve time and time again. I don't think they need that many. And then when you add on the errands as well, which are even less interesting mostly, it's like
They're
what?
more stripped down.
Why have we got a third tier of quest? Where? Why have we got a third tier of non-interesting quests? It's like, don't need it.
Yeah, fewer quests, more interesting stories. I don't see how they saw the breadth of the quests that they had, and they just thought like something's missing here. Like none of these quests have.
There's no
Like
soul.
they play video games too.
There's no heart or soul in some of these, like in most of these. It's just,
Yeah.
it's
I think it's a huge, especially for how bloated this game does feel with how many quests and errands or whatever you want to call them there are. Yeah, fewer quests, write some better characters, like take more time. Look at other games like The Last of Us that flipped how the mechanics are used in a particular situation on its head,
Yeah.
and like surprise us with something. I mean, there's one in The Witcher where you it's more of a main quest, but the ghost of this kind of like um kind of boastful like Viking, you know, the kind of guy that like comes back from a hunt and throws the boar's head on the
Yeah.
table and then grabs a girl in a pint and he's on the floor in the morning, right? And Geralt's this very stoic character. He's very reserved. He's very this ghost inhabits you, and all of a sudden you become this boastful character that Geralt isn't. And you go to a wedding with Triss. There's no combat involved. You just go to a wedding. You wrestle
Yeah,
pigs.
yeah,
You dance. You sing. It's in the Hearts of Stone. That's an amazing idea. Where like you don't ever do something interesting with the side quest. You could do that with Aloy. She's fucking tired. Like have them sit down and like make her a better character. Make her not. She's not constantly sighing. Like she does get tired. Make that quest where she has to unwind. Otherwise, she's gonna lose her fucking mind. Like Ludo narrative dissidents be screwed with this kind of fake ticking clock mechanic with like the blight is going to take over and like humanity's going to be destroyed in 3 months if we don't figure out getting Gaia back up online or whatever. Like do it. Like there's so much room for that type of thing. And I just wish they would have done at least a couple of them. But I don't know. I don't remember any of the quests in that game. I remember moments. I remember set pieces, and they're great.
yeah, yeah. No, I think
Not a lot of uniqueness.
yeah, you're right to bring up quests like that in The Witcher where you don't actually all the combat's limited. Like it's just you're wandering around, doing things, interacting with objects, dancing, doing whatever. That's definitely something that they could take a page out of other books from. And yeah, if maybe they don't want to deal with the branching potential mess of doing narrative storytelling and letting the player choose what to do. Like I can see just trying to map that out. You're just like, oh, this is going to be difficult. But it really does add weight to what you're doing. And sometimes it's nice to play games where you have no input, because then you haven't got to stress yourself out. The character is the character. But you're right to say that the stuff that you come back to, although it's memorable, typically are things like that, or things that are unusual in comparison to the rest of the game. That's why I did like Katalo's one, because sure, you're going off collecting all these bits for his arm, but the interesting part of that is that you kind of do the final part of that. You kill one machine, so it's not like a big war. Like most quests end in like this massive fucking great big battle. It's just one machine. It's pretty easy, and he has his arm on. You've got him this new arm because he's lost his arm during the game. And there's this like poignant moment where he takes it off and he's like, I've proved to myself I don't need this. I'll use it when I have to, but I'm not going to walk around with it. I am who I am now. I've got one arm, but that's one of 30 or 40 different quests that this game sends you on, if not more.
Yeah, as much as I'm giving this game shit or being critical of it, maybe overly critical, some people out there might be thinking I am. I will admit, I did like the moment where he decides that he's come to terms with the loss of his arm.
Yeah,
and that he'll only use it
because his identity is for the tribe anyway. His identity is forged in battle and being physically. Battle is reliant on being physically able, and losing an arm, you take a massive hit to that. Like there's only so much you can do, and to see him kind of come to terms with that, and well, he's still got it as a backup if he needs it, but he's not going to wander around. Because I was really interested to see, because I was like, oh, we're going to get him an arm, and then is all the cutscenes, you're going to have this new prosthetic arm that's been built, and the way they get around it is, no, he just puts it away and goes, I'm not going to use that. And I was like, oh, so I haven't got to worry about that being, that appearing 20 hours later where he hasn't got the arm. I'm like, oh, how have you done that?
What are they?
You
what
idiots!
Are they for?
Yeah, there's work to be done there, and it's asking a lot of time of people as well, as we've mentioned with the length. So you've got to try and make these things a bit more comparative. A bit more compelling. There's obviously other stuff outside of quests and narrative bits and pieces, what you like to call collectathons, and there's a number of those in here. We've got black boxes, we've got vistas, we've got survey drones, relic ruins. What did you make of these? Because these are the ultimate filler of any open world game. These are the things that they all have for whatever reason, or most have for whatever reason. And you get rewards, you get resources, etc. But most normal people will skip all these, or skip some of these. They'll get bored of them. What did you make of their efforts to try and at least make these even more obscure activities something that you wanted to do, because we'll talk about the tool next later. I'll leave that thought, but we'll come back to that.
All right, I'll leave the trophy element to the side because I think it's a good time to maybe be a bit more on the positive side for the sake of the audience. And this is sincere, by the way. I'm not trying to lie just so that I can gain some favor or anything like that. Who cares, right?
Don't get any favors.
A couple of good things. Yeah. Very few. I appreciate that. You have Survey Drones, Relic Ruins, Vistas, black boxes. There's 12 black boxes.
Yeah.
There's 9 Vistas.
Yeah.
There's 8 Ruins. There's 10 Survey Drones.
Yes.
Much appreciated that it's not Far Cry, where it would be 30 or 40 or 25, and then all of a sudden you have trophies that say, just get 75% of them because we admit that there's too many of them there. So I do appreciate that. Okay, I'll do the negative and then I'll move to the positive. I'll end on the positive. Survey drones, I didn't like because I don't know what it is. I appreciate the puzzle where, like, okay, the survey drone's up there. I need to find how to get up there so I can jump on it. But then when I get up there, I don't know about you, OTAPs, but at least like 10, 12 times I've jumped. I made the leap of faith, and Aloy missed it. I don't know what's going on there.
Happened, I think, twice for me. But there's something about the way she jumps, and we may touch on this later, in that she jumps really high and not forward.
And then shoots down.
And then you think, I'm going to miss that. And sometimes you do. And you think, why did you jump like that? And sometimes you don't. And it just still makes my heart go. It's not very... It's a bit strange the way she jumps. But that, to be fair, that only happened a couple of times with me. And I think one of the times I was in the wrong place. And I bodged it the second time and glided a bit. Because the glider is... I liked using that. That was handy to...
it's great.
Bodge your way up and down things that you probably shouldn't be messing around with. But
I love the sound and how the DualSense like pulsates. Oh, it's great. Yeah. That humming.
Yes.
The beautiful humming. And you know what? Like, I may have gotten the platinum trophy, but I guess I might just like absolutely suck at timing my jumps in this game. So
the thing is, there's no timing. A lot of the time, there's no timing involved because it stops.
It's hard to judge the distance.
That's why I don't know. When she's climbing, sometimes she'll put her arm out. And I go, okay, I know there's something there she can grab onto. Sometimes she doesn't. And I'm like, okay, why is it sometimes communicating me with just this subtle animation that I can stretch to that, and other times it doesn't, but I can. So there's plenty of times when felt like I was stuck. I was like, where the hell am I supposed to go? And I'll just try it, and it would work. And I'd be like, okay, what are we doing?
That's another thing. Like the climbing is very inconsistent to the point where you're just not sure if you're doing the right thing or not. Whereas in another game, by the 20-hour mark, you should have a very good idea of what you can climb, what you can't, and why you can't. But in this game, sometimes it's like, I'm not quite sure why I can't do this. Vistas come back from the first game. They're worse.
They're the worst one of the lot, I found.
Yeah.
Crap.
Speaking of inconsistency, the game even... As much as the game is hand-holdy, the game tries to be hand-holdy in this regard where it's giving you clear areas where, like, oh, I'm supposed to stand on this precipice.
Yeah, you got a radius.
And line it up.
That's it.
But it doesn't work.
No. I mean, it will. It will when you don't think it should work.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when you've lined up pixel by pixel perfect, and she goes, "Oh, I'm close." I'm like, "I'm on it." I'm not close. I'm looking directly at it.
How many times I've spoken directly to Aloy, shouting at her about these fucking vistas. They should have just, gameplay testers should have just told them, like, look, if they're relatively close, just give it to them. Who cares? Just make them. This is not supposed to be a point of frustration in this game, in the grand scheme of things.
I take it you did them all.
Yeah. I did everything.
You did everything, yeah. So the underwater one in San Francisco. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because there's a little like I think it's like a boost ledge, like on a ledge, like a little like nub that you can grab onto and swim, and you can pull yourself forward. I wasn't pressing anything, but every time I went near that thing, it kept making Aloy do something weird. But you needed to be right near that thing to get the vista. It took me forever, that one, and because your movement is slow, it's a little bit more cumbersome, the underwater type thing. I think it's a good introduction. Certainly, it makes the world much more expansive. But when you're trying to get this exact fucking area that they demand of you, that one drove me up the wall because it's the last one, of course. And of course, in my mind, I just thought this is the last one. This would be a nice thing to do. 5 minutes, and then I'll, carry on with my day. No, 25 minutes. I'm there, fucking swimming around currents, and then trying to get this thing down. And then when I do finally get it, like I said, I was like, that didn't feel like I was in the right place. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. Right? You can.
I mean, that one didn't take me that long, actually. The problem but that's the thing, it's so inconsistent. Like, it could have taken me 25 minutes,
Yeah.
or I could have got it in a single minute. The issue for me with that one is I had the sound off, and I was above ground, and I didn't hear her telling me I should be in the water for it.
Yes.
And there's something that looked similar to the Vista above ground, and then somehow I realized, like, oh, I have to actually go in the water to do it. Okay, the black boxes are whatever. The story behind the black boxes with the 10 being how the Tenakt has developed their entire culture around this museum of these kind of like jet fighter paratroopers that had stood their ground during this like federal dispute with water and land.
That was an interesting to read about and learn about.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of the story, going through the museum.
Yes.
If you want to talk about like a story element that shows, I mean, it's maybe having its cake and eating it too in terms of show and don't tell. But that's a great way of exposition, a bit of lore.
Yeah.
It's like literally a museum is there to explain things to you.
Yeah.
So they can get away with the exposition there. And I was like, I'm going to go through every single one of these holograms and figure out what's going on. I'm like, oh, the Tenakt, the 10, I get it.
Yeah.
When they go in the arena, they jump down like kind of like a homage to like the paratrooper jumping from the fighter jet, whatever. Like, great stuff. Black boxes are whatever in terms of a collectathon. I did like the relic ruins though, because I thought in a game that is so combat centric, because partly with the side quest they didn't do anything other than go here, fight thing, come back.
Yeah.
It's a little puzzle.
Yeah.
And I just liked being able to, okay, don't have to worry about fighting or shooting anything or dodge rolling. I'm in this area and I just kind of look vertically up and down and spatially and just push and pull crates to get these little
funny how the Last of Us crates have come back. Like, I was immediately when I saw me pushing boxes around, I was like, hang on a minute, which other Sony game utilizes these a lot? Oh, The Last of Us.
Yeah, are there any pallets?
Yeah,
that you have to
this is all. That's all Jim Ryan's do. That's his one thing. He's like, every game must have a pushable box and a puzzle solve around that. That's my stamp on the industry.
I'm just going to assume that every bad idea in this game was his input. Like, he was holding the controller incorrectly. He's like, I can't figure out how to do it, and no one could tell.
He was the lead playtester,
so they just
let
he was the only one.
Yeah, they just let him get away. And it was like, okay, Jim.
It's like, wait, I never know if it's going to my stash. Can you put in a couple more lines where she tells me? So I don't know. Like, I was being a bit negative, but I did like the relic ruins a lot.
Oh yeah,
there's only 8 of them.
Yeah,
could have been more.
Yeah, they're definitely the highlights. They reminded me of like I'm not gonna say old school Tomb Raider, but that sort of thing. And Assassin's Creed used to have things like this. I can't remember what they used to call them, but they used to be like areas that you go and explore and puzzle solve the environment. And that was a bit of a throwback to that, albeit these are a lot smaller mostly. I think there's one in San Francisco which felt quite big. And I was like, I don't know if I've got a handle on what I'm doing. Yeah, I was getting lost.
I like how every whatever, I don't know when the world fell, like 2050.
Yeah.
But everyone has like they leave like emails and audio messages of their passwords just strewn about.
It's like, that's a security breach in 2022, let alone a far technologically sophisticated world in like 2060.
Maybe it's a commentary on just how we'll never learn.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, those collectathon things, I think they're hit and miss, but more of a hit than a miss for me. I agree about the black boxes. That was interesting learning about all that. I didn't have any issues with the survey drones necessarily, other than a couple of times. But the relic ruins are the highlight, and the vistas are the easy low light for me in terms of those activities. I mentioned tall necks, and tall necks are quite synonymous with Horizon because it was widely praised in Zero Dawn that, you know, in Far Cry, for example, to unlock the map, you go up to a tower, you log your radio message, or I don't know what you do in Primal, maybe you put a spear in it or something, but there's that uncovers the map, it uncovers the activities in that area, and it's like, oh, it's a tried and tested way of doing things. And then with Zero Dawn, we had the tall necks, which were these giant walking machines that you couldn't engage in combat, you couldn't hurt, you couldn't kill. And the idea was that it was a puzzle to get on top of that thing and synchronize your spear with them to unlock all the activities. I loved it because it was something different. You know, you trying to get on these things whilst they're moving. Again, there's a puzzle element to that. Although we're relying on the jumping again, which, as we've alluded to, can be a bit sketchy. And then also contextually, it makes sense that you've got this focus and that's syncing up with your device. So yeah, of course I could see all these bits and pieces. I like all those bits here. And they kind of do the same, but they go for a few different scenarios here. Tell us your thoughts on where they took this, because they were well within their rights just to kind of leave this as they were, where you just find a way of jumping on them, but they had a couple of different ways of approaching this, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I think one thing they did in the earlier game is they would put enemies around the tall neck.
Yeah.
You kind of had to either stealth past or clear out before you could actually climb the highest point in the area and wait for the tall neck to come around to you and then jump onto them. That's kind of how they position that as like a mini kind of combat trial again. But this is what I'm talking about, OTAPs, where with the side quests and the other things were like they just were way too cookie cutter with it, and they could have gone outside the box.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at a side quest, like, you know what? I haven't seen that before. Like, you know what? That is a really fun idea. Like, I didn't expect that. And they do that here with the tall necks. I just wish they would have expanded this philosophy of kind of slightly changing up what the player expects of a second Horizon game in the way they did with the tall necks. So instead of that, they kind of felt like, oh, it's kind of boring if all you do is, oh, there's a tall neck, let me go climb it. Yeah. And for several of the tall necks, they just took it from a different angle. There's one tall neck where there's no giant building or rock structure that you can climb on to get close enough to climb it. But there's all these like these giant bolt casters.
Yes. Yeah.
Like bolted into the ground around the tall neck and the cool thing is, like, it makes sense. They're not just there. There was another group of what are the people that they're the scrappers, the Aserum?
Yeah, the Oseram.
The Oseram, sorry. They were trying to take the tall neck down, but they died. Yeah. And so you're like, wait, the only way I'm going to be able to climb this tall neck is if I bring it down first. So you start using these giant like bolt casters to basically shoot a rope into it. And once you shoot one, then it attracts enemies again, another combat scenario. Yeah. But then you go around to like 3 or 4 of them, and eventually it'll lose its footing and it falls. Then you climb onto it, it gains its footing back, and then you can use its your little thing to turn its Wi-Fi on.
I kept calling it synchronizing this Assassin's Creed, but
it's kind of the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And then they actually combine 2 things in one of them, where one of the cauldrons is based around. So the cauldrons are the giant facilities that make. They kind of like they're self-automated facilities that make the machines. Yes. And this cauldron is a tall neck making facility, which we have never seen before. But something's wrong. Like, it's been thousands of years. Some of the bits. There's not enough oil in the gears, and there's some debris, and it's screwed up. The whole facility has stopped making tall necks. Yeah. So your whole task is to fix it so that it's making tall necks. Like, really, really smart. There's one where it's stuck in the ocean off the coast of San Francisco, and you have to swim through a couple of underwater, past some snapjaws to get some components to turn it back. Like, so these are the things I'm talking about, where it's just yeah, this is more of what I wanted to see from this game, where they're taking something from the original game and just doing something fun and different with it. A bit of
Yeah.
variety.
No, I thought they were great. I'm interested to know about the one where you bring the tool neck down with the Osterom tools and then get it that way. Whether once you, and we will talk about this, once you unlock the flying, whether you can just fly on top of it and glide.
I don't know.
I
It's a
assume
good
you,
question.
I assume you can, but
You
imagine,
should be able to, especially in an open world game, but I
yeah.
wonder.
And even there's like, I think it's like the second or maybe third tool neck that you'll bump into. It's locked. It's even got a little lock icon on it because you can only
It
get to
really
it via
does.
fly. And I was like, what the fuck?
What does that mean?
I was sitting there on the map looking at it, and then later on, the game foreshadows heavily that you're going to be flying, and I was like, oh. I didn't want to believe it at first because I thought, like, I don't want to get excited and it would be some fucking garbage where you teleport on top of it. But yeah, I'm wondering whether if you did just skip through that, got to the back end of the game, and then unlock the flying, whether you can go back and do some of that stuff. But yeah, tall necks were great. You mentioned the cauldrons. Even on the original, I struggled to get into the cauldrons. I don't like in this game. I hate being kind of confined because it's an open world game for one. But I just find I'm better at the game when I've got more room to operate in and use stealth, etc., etc. The cauldrons kind of take that advantage I like to have away in most scenarios, and you're following quite a linear path through. There's puzzle solving along the way. I just find them. Also, I find them quite unsettling. I don't know why. I don't like. I was playing one late at night, and I was like, I don't know why I'm feeling uneasy here. There's nothing's going to happen to me. But it's just something about the atmosphere of those things I don't like.
Right.
But this is a continuation from the original. Did they treat this with the same respect, do you feel, of the tall necks, or more of a, we've done these before and you know what you're going to get, you're going to unlock some override. I didn't like what they did with the overrides, you'd unlock the core, or you'd override the core, and then some of the overrides for the machines were locked still. You had to go and get more parts, and I was like, all right,
Yeah.
what are you doing there? Like, no, that's silly. Blame corruption or some glitch. No, I'm not having that. But the cauldrons themselves, did you find these enjoyable?
I mean, they're fine. I think it's the novelty had kind of worn off, and they didn't do enough different with them the second time around. Aside from there were two in particular, the one with the tall neck,
Yes.
and then there's one that is a submerged cauldron, but that brings about its own issues with just I don't care what game it is. Swimming just doesn't 100% work. It's like
Sucks.
motion controls.
Yeah.
In theory, it should work, but it just doesn't do exactly what you want it to. And there's even an Ocarina of Time element where you're lowering and
Oh, you're playing with the water levels, aren't you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the water temple where you're raising and lowering the level of the water.
Got any
And it
boots?
wasn't that bad, but there's a specific part of it where there's a crate that you have to have in a specific location while the water is lowered. And then when you raise the water level, you're supposed to be able to grab on top of the
it.
why can't she just shoot her rope caster to the thing from the water and pull herself up type of thing? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they were okay. I I didn't necessarily feel like they were some sort of like the relic ruins, like a bit of a changing up the usual kind of side quest open world stuff and giving you a bit of a palate cleanser. I wouldn't necessarily call them that, but they're okay.
Yeah.
I think some of the because they all end in a big boss battle, right?
Yeah.
Some of those boss battles were at least for me, like they were really really exciting. Like the so other ones were okay, just a lot of dodge rolling and knowing your iframes and that. But I don't know, they're okay.
Yeah. No, they were probably, like I said, I was never a big fan of them in the first one, and this was kind of like more of the same. I just felt cheated.
Are you claustrophobic?
Don't know, actually. I don't think so. Well, again, if someone locked me in a box where I could hardly move, I think most people would be slightly anxious to get out of there. But
The reason I ask is I'm extremely claustrophobic. When I was 8 years old, I got locked in a truck and I kicked the window out because I felt the walls closing in on me and I got in trouble. It was the next door neighbor's truck And yeah, but I think the that type of like open world versus more confined area didn't bother me per se.
Maybe it's a
I don't know.
subtle. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm getting claustrophobic. Maybe this is what this is evoking some buried memory. I'll just have one day. I'll be sitting there, I'll be playing Horizon 3, and then I'll be through a cauldron, and I'll have this awful memory come back of when my dad locked me in a box and turned it upside down or something, and I was left there for 3 days. Sorry, Dad. He's not.
Classic.
He's not an awful human. I don't think he did that to me, but.
But you can't be certain.
I can't. I might ask him when I next see him and just see what he says. He's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Did you lock me in a box when I was younger?" No. Okay, we'll see. We've got like a little document here of just some notes and talking points that we've made that we've shared, just to expose the business a little bit here. There's one thing that you popped on there, which is choosing to explore versus being led to explore via side quests. What do you mean by that? And is there a particular question you've got or a point that you wanted to make around the way that you explore in this game and find hopefully new and interesting things?
This might be something where maybe I haven't played enough open world games, or I don't play enough open world games to find a better example of a game that does it better. But there are just times. Oh, okay, I'll say this. And I'll ask you as well. In this game, I never really went out on my own to, unless it was like you run into a relic ruin or a black box or a collectible, right? It's strewn out about the world. There wasn't a moment where I found something that wasn't tied to a side quest, that didn't have a marker on it, that wasn't leading me to a specific place, where I stumbled upon something that was like, oh, this is really, really cool. Thing that happens in Breath of the Wild all the time. I'm sure after saying that, I might have lost several people. That's fine.
They switched off long
You
ago,
don't.
those people. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's either that or people who don't like this game because I've been kind of complaining about it a bit. But to me, every almost every ounce of exploration in this game is tied to a side quest or a main mission. There was points in the game where if you see the map, you go to the map and there's kind of this kind of open area. It looks like there's something there.
Yeah.
And I've gone to that location and there's nothing there. But then I've done a side quest that has led me there.
Yeah, and then there's something
And then
there.
it's populated with machines. I'm like, oh. And you know what? That's not specific to this game. That's happened in other games as well. It's got to have trigger. This is supposed to be a location that has like a boss fight or something like that. But I never felt like after a while, I stopped exploring on my own. I did the side quest because the side quest would take me to all the places that were important.
Yeah.
Is what I mean. I'm not
It's-
stumbling across anything.
No, I mean it's a symptom of this way of structuring your open world, isn't it? Is that everything's got to be icon driven and map driven. You've got to find out where you need to go, what you need to do. And there was a couple of. So when I was wandering around, this seemed to happen more in like the lowlands sort of forest area where I'd be wandering around and then Aloy would be like, "Oh, there's some bodies here," and you could trigger. Essentially it happened twice, and the end goal was it would lead to where some green shine was, which is
Right.
a tool
Okay.
that you or a resource that you use to upgrade weapons and outfits, and it could be useful. But what would happen is I'd stumble across these bodies, and then Ayla would be like, "Oh, investigate them," and then it would set me off on like a track. I'd follow the track. It would inevitably end up maybe at like a machine site where she infers that they were ambushed by the machines and then killed, and then you fight the machine, and then it'd be like, "Oh, there's some green shine here," and it's sort of like a little reward. That wasn't anywhere on the map as an activity or as an errand or something to do. But it was something that just kind of announced itself as I was exploring through the world. But it only happened twice in 106 hours. So that's kind of the only thing. It's close to what what you'd ask for there in terms of naturally finding things, and then it's over time. It trains you not to do the. You're right. It trains you not to bother exploring because there's a reason why there's nothing there because there's nothing there because it's for a quest area, and everything that is of interest to you is so clearly marked on the map. I mean, they try and like hide it with a little question mark, and it's like, well, I know something's there still. You're still telling me to go there. Like, it would have been much more natural just to find those little underwater caves or whatever, rather than have an icon there. And I know it's hard though, isn't it? Because some people want to be told where everything is so they can, especially if you tie a trophy to it, which thank God they didn't to a lot of the real low level finding stuff. But you know, the option to, because they even at the beginning say, do you want guided or unguided, or there's a similar choice you made. They still guide you on the unguided mode. There's no real exploration you're doing. It's just that there's no kind of like GPS showing you the exact, you know, route to get there. It's just got a start and a finish. But yeah, so those, I don't know if you encountered any of those, a couple of those little instances that I mentioned about randomly just finding like an ambush site. And there's one where this other guy tried to climb up at the side of a mountain and then got attacked by a glint hawk or something and died. And again, he was trying to get to some green shine. So that was kind of my reward for doing that. But did you stumble across any of those? But that's the only thing I can really think of in terms of like anything I found that wasn't explicitly like, go here, X reward will be here.
The only thing I've really come across, like I've come across kind of the submerged areas that have the green shine.
Yeah.
Or the green spark by myself. But then you get in there and it proceeds to tell you like, oh, collect all of the green spark in this. You're like, in this, you're just telling me exactly what I need to do. Okay, fine. So I've come across that. I've also come across a rebel Tenakth ambushing other tribes. Like I've been walking and then you put your focus on and you'll see the people highlighted in orange, which designates that they're enemies in the bushes.
Yes.
And then I see the Tenakth coming through this location. I'm like, what's going on here? And then they're like, attack! And then they'll like boulders will come down and they start fighting each other. I mean, that stuff's neat. Like I like that. It's few and far between, but it is a flair that I appreciate. And you know what? You might go through the game and never see it, but I appreciate that they did put those specific sections in.
But it's now the hot topic, isn't it, around this type of open world game? Because in a post Breath of the Wild and now post Elden Ring world, where you know you're encouraged to just explore, and it's almost in Elden Ring, it's necessary to go off and find your own way, and it won't tell you exactly what's there, what's not there. It's a bit of a conundrum now. I mean, I enjoy these open world games for sure, but you're now forever going to have people saying, well, if it's got quest markers, I'm not interested. And you know what? They were halfway there with this game, because if you listen to a lot of the quest instructions, they will say to you, go southeast of the waterfalls near the Lowlands tribe base. If they just giving you the option to have no quest markers, you could, in theory, just through visual or just by knowing where that area of the map is, find that area. Then perhaps once you get in the radius, Aloy is like, oh, this is where, you know, Val told me to go. That's near the, you know, to get whatever I'm doing. But you can't turn the quest markers off. Like you can deactivate it all, but they're still on the map. And it's kind of like if they'd just taken the extra step to remove all that stuff and let people discover this stuff, it may well satiate that kind of desire that people are now having to not be told what to do, where to go. And there's always going to be an element of it in these games, but they could reduce that for those that want to have that experience. And they had the infrastructure there in terms of they put in the detail in the quest narrative to explain visually where it is and the location of it. That's kind of what all you need, you know, a rough direction and guide, and then you can go and find it yourself. But I don't know.
They were so close with a few things. One in side quest in particular, there's I believe it's in the southwest in the jungle area. There's a tribe that lives near a river that's been poisoned. It's running red.
Yeah.
All you got to do is follow that river upstream. I don't need quest markers for that.
Yeah.
I follow the river itself. It's so close yet so far, right? So that's a moment where like trust the player, like take the HUD off and just have the player do it themselves, and you get the satisfaction of actually feeling like you are exploring as Aloy actually is in the game.
Yeah.
And I do know she does have a focus, so the fact that there's like all these projections and holograms mapped out does work within this specific world.
Yeah.
However, it is a moment where it could have been less handholdy, and you're just visually following this blood red river up the stream, and then there's this rebel base where uh they've dammed
That's
the
it.
river
Yeah.
with which is actually like when I talked about side quests I couldn't remember. I did specifically remember that side quest where
Yes.
they dammed a river with dead machines to poison the river so that like
That's it.
the village would suffer. Yeah. So yeah, like a little bit more of that would have gone a long way, I think.
Or even the
I,
choice.
yeah,
Like it's not. It can't. Well,
turn it off.
armchair developer, but I think
Right.
there's going to be a demand for this more and more now that Elden Ring's been such a smashing success. The demand to have the option at least to carve your own path is surely people are watching the reaction, the set. Like, every metric you can measure this by, Elden Ring's going to been a huge success. You can't help but think that that's going to bleed over, and other developers might think, well, let's keep the guided path there. Let's not take that away because we know there's a huge audience for that. There's a place for that. People. I don't want to have to be always scratching my ass, wondering where to go next. But for those that want a bit more of perhaps a dynamic experience, we can now cater towards that if we just make these what feel like small adjustments. I don't feel like we're asking you to redesign the game necessarily. You might want to think about where you put things and what visual cues you have around it to help the player. But other than that, it feels doable.
Right, and I think adjustments is the key word there. Like these other companies that are looking at something like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild, they're not going to borrow everything wholesale.
No.
They're going to look at that and like, why didn't we think of that? Or that is a great idea, and then they're going to bring it into their own. Like things in Elden Ring wouldn't exist if Breath of the Wild didn't come out, and things in Breath of the Wild wouldn't work if Assassin's Creed didn't come out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to happen as you say, and I will appreciate like say what you will about Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. You can like them or hate them, or be or love them or be just not interested. But I'm glad that these games are coming out so that devs at these studios that are looking to think of the open world and at it from a different angle or in a different way can look at that and be like, okay, get inspired to get ideas from these games. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future with open world games because I think Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring do a good job of making people reassess what an open world can be. And there's one thing I wanted to talk about specifically with the design philosophy, with something that basically, I don't know what you want to call it. In Assassin's Creed, it's called Eagle Vision. In the Batman
Yeah.
Arkham series, it's called Detective Mode.
Witcher
In The
Vision.
Witcher, the Witcher Vision, the Sixth Sense, whatever it's called. And then here in this game, it's the Focus. It's great to a point, but there is a moment where I think that once you put that mechanic in the game, it keeps the level designers, it gives them an out
Yeah.
if they can't figure out a good way to design a level in a unique way. And what I mean by that is, and this is back when the Arkham games came out. You know, Batman. Batman. That's the name of that new movie, right?
Yeah.
Batman is the world's greatest detective, quote unquote. And then those games looked absolutely amazing back in the day. And you'd go into this space and you have this room that is just absolutely full of stuff, beautifully rendered.
Yeah.
This lived in apartment, right? He's coming into this apartment to try to figure something out. The game teaches you to ignore all that stuff and turn on Batman Vision and look for the giant orange
Glowing thing.
flashing object
Yeah.
that you can interact with. And then after a while, your brain is trained. You don't even start paying attention to what's actually in the room, and you're not even like doing the detective work. You're looking for the orange thing that you can interact with. The same in Assassin's Creed, and in some ways, like I get what they're trying to do, right? And you were talking about the balance between not frustrating your playtesters with I don't know where I'm supposed to go. So you paint your ladder yellow. So like no, you're supposed to go there. There's a giant arrow leading you there. You know, Naughty Dog does it in more. They started with like having everything yellow, and then they found more interesting ways to lead people linearly through a specific location, but there is something about an over reliance on this cheat kind of highlight mode that I just think holds levels back or areas back from being more interesting and letting the player kind of figure it out. But if you put that in your game, then it's just you design a level. It's like, all right, well, we don't really know how to do this, so let's just leave it up to Aloy. You're going to hit the focus. How many times do you think you actually click the focus button the entire game?
That's
106
6,000.
hours. Yeah.
Honestly, it's not even. It's on. The annoying thing of the focus is you can't run with it on, so it's like she walks.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why that's how like they limited from you from overusing it. But you're still overusing it.
Oh yeah. It's just crutch, isn't it? And you're trained to use it because you'll miss things without it. And I mean, look, one of the few ones that I feel like makes contextual sense, completely, the way the focus works and operates. I'm like, yes, it's an AR device, like that's clever. I appreciate that because a lot of them are just like, oh, you can like eagle vision. What the fuck? What are you talking about?
Sure. Right. It does make sense.
But
it's not all bad.
No.
It's not all bad. I appreciate that it's there.
I kind of think it's really difficult to have it and then not like once it's in there, it must be difficult to not utilize it because
it just in specific situations you're not actually looking for yourself.
No, you're not. You're looking for a little.
You're not paying attention to specific things. Yeah,
looks like a little glitch. Yeah,
so, I don't know.
I agree. Yeah,
it's hard.
It's really difficult because what we call traditional open world games are hugely popular. If you think of like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, Horizon and Ghost of like, these are games that people do enjoy. So in my ideal world, you'd have something that can cater for both. And if maybe it does mean that they've got to be separate games, and we have to just you see the Elden Rings come out and you're like, well, that's the more adventure type game where you're actually going to go off and explore, and then if I want a bit more of a less taxing experience and a bit more of a guided one, I play Horizon 3 or I play Far Cry, whatever that might be. And that might be the only way to do it instead of trying to satiate both very diverse and different needs of an audience. But time will tell. It'll be interesting to see where we are in sort of 3 to 5 years and what's come down the pipe and whether they've made adjustments to try and breach that sort of gap.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people out there that listening to all these nitpicks I have, and they're like, actually, I appreciated the hand-holding nature of it. That didn't bother me at all. I like the and that's totally fine. It just personally, I just wish they hadn't used it so much. So yeah, right. There are slightly different open world games for people who prefer, Well, like look at two sides of the spectrum. Really, are Elden Ring and Forbidden West, right? So,
and I'm happy to play both. Like I can.
Same.
I'm not going to choose one. I'm not going to see like Horizon 3 and I see a quest mark and be like, oh, I can't play that anymore. That game's obviously shit. So, no.
Right.
Let's not talk rubbish our entire lives. Like,
hey, I made my mind up 5 years ago. I can't change it now. People don't.
That is very.
People don't evolve.
No.
Yeah.
I've popped in a little note here around movement and getting around, and there's several ways in which you can do that. I didn't, as I mentioned, I didn't partake in any of the fast traveling, but I'm sure you did.
I fast traveled as much as I possibly could. Yeah. When you know you're going for the platinum and you're gonna have to bounce around the map. And especially in a game where it requires you to craft every single thing and look for specific enemies that have specific drops.
Yeah. And there's specific items that destroy themselves if you don't tear them off. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't not fast travel. And that doesn't bother me. Like this technically doesn't make sense because geographic. I don't care.
Well, it's a complex that I've got. I know it's a personal problem.
I think I have an opinion on fast travel. Like I don't care about it. I use it all the time. I think that's very. That's like 95% of the people.
Oh yeah.
You have to walk me through your philosophy on this, because when you told me that you actually didn't use fast travel at all and you just basically used a charger or a
Mate.
bristleback or whatever, like you got to walk me through your mindset on this, because it's kind of baffling.
It's not a hard and it's not a hard and fast rule,
Okay.
but I just don't like the idea of me traveling through this world and missing encounters, or they're not being I don't know, there's no cause and effect there. You're essentially going from one side of the map to the other. You don't lose any items, any health or whatever. And what I enjoy about open world is the mindset of I'm going out exploring. I'm traveling through this world, and the consequence of that is that I might bump into enemies, might bump into allies, I might find something, I might pick up new resources. So it just kind of it freezes you in your player state in terms of inventory, health, and resources, and just plops you on the other side of the world. And I just prefer to, if possible, if I can tolerate it, because it's not 100%, because there are some games that are just it gets so dull that I have to fast travel. I am not going to completely torture myself, but for this game I kind of did. But yeah, that's kind of where my mindset's at. I like the idea that that's part of the experience, is kind of getting into these scrapes as I go through. That's why sometimes I really do like to play survival games, but they're just a bit too hardcore. I always appreciated Red Dead Redemption 2. You know, you camp out and stuff. I would just go away from the actual camp and just like explore. That was one game where I explored just naturally, because I knew I had like a little campsite I could set up, and then I'd eat my dinner and stuff, and then wake up for the next day, and then over time his beard was growing, his hair was growing. I'd go back to the camp looking like a completely different man. It felt like it was an adventure. I'd just come, and maybe I'd come back with some rabbits and food, and I'd feel like a bit of a hero. And that's not what you get here, but that's what I'm trying to replicate in these games. Most of them don't have the mechanics around it to satiate that. I keep using the word satiate, stop it. But that's what I was trying to implement here. And what I ran into in terms of traveling is the mounts are awful. The chargers, the bristlebacks, the fucking claw striders are the slowest things in the world. They're cool, like look, I'm riding this raptor. It's call it what it is.
Right. You spend 50 hours getting to that point, like, oh, I can all right, I'm gonna override this thing and finally ride it, and then it's shit.
It's so slow.
Disappointing.
But just trying to get around on those things is so cumbersome. Like, I think the only game that does it worse is The Witcher 3. Like, if I had the option to shoot Roach, well, you can no guns, but to put a sword in Roach's head and get a new horse, I would have done, because he was awkward as fuck, or she, I think it is actually. And it's similar here. It's a similar issue where the environment and the terrain constantly, you just hitting things and stopping, dead stop, go over a bridge. I'm like, what's going on here? Why is the game so difficult to get around? It's almost like you're telling me you want me to use these fast travel points, which I, should have done. But I think in this situation, it's just a bit of a crutch to cover up what I perceive to be a bad mount system. And then they do obviously eradicate this with the flying, but the on the ground stuff.
Too late.
The flying is a day late and a dollar short, isn't it? It's like,
yeah. Especially for someone like you or me, you took 10 hours in the Daunt, but I'm pretty close behind you, where I want to do as much as possible for the end game.
Yeah, if I'm in that location, like I'm in a Raiders, I feel like I'll go and do it. Like, it was that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
I'll get everything done that I can before moving on.
And when they give you the flying in the penultimate mission,
it's ridiculous.
It's like, I understand
that happened
holding it back, because
OTAPs, Final Fantasy 15. The car flies at the end of the game. It's like,
I didn't even get that. Is that what I mean? I missed out on the flying car, and when I found out, I knew it was in there.
Might as well take another point or a star off that game then. That's some unspeakable, unforgivable shit.
Could you fast travel in that?
Can you?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
But I was happy. I loved just letting the car. I think the other thing I appreciate is auto. travel to places where you set a point on the map and the mount takes you there, and the
Yeah,
car
I
is
like
do
that.
that. You can't really
Yeah.
do that with this because it will stay on the road you're on. It will do that, but if you've got to turn right to get to where you're going, the mount will carry on going on that road, so you have to intervene. That would have made things a lot easier for me because I like to just put that on and just chill, and I'm like, yeah, I'm riding a machine here, but
All right. So the people know that I'm human. I will say a bad word about Breath of the Wild. Like the horses are absolutely useless in that game. I don't. There's something about horses in games. Red Dead Redemption 2 worked to a certain extent just because fast travel is such a pain in the ass, and it wasn't it wasn't all encompassing because it
yeah,
was locked to the railroad,
yes,
to the train. So you had to really use your horse. And actually, the pathfinding for the horse was quite good in that game. I think they realized they needed to make it good because you're going to be on your horse for so long.
yeah,
And that is a game that is about like we're going for immersion, whether you like it or not, type
yes,
of thing.
yeah,
And it's admirable in a way. Like as much as it is frustrating, I can appreciate that type of thing. But games really need to start making horse travel care if my horse clips through stuff.
yeah,
Just how about it doesn't stop every 2 seconds
yeah.
that there's a little rock in front of its way type of thing.
It's really
Just make it
frustrating.
fun. Make it fun to do. It seems like Elden Ring, like the torrent,
Yeah,
might be a bit more arcadey. Like it's fast. It can double. It can jump.
fucking jump up waterfalls and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Leave it to FromSoft to you would think that they would go the Red Dead Redemption 2 route with their horse and just make it an absolute pain to use. But no, it seems like they actually made it fun to ride, surprisingly enough.
yeah. No, I agree, but yeah, the mount traveling and this is no good.
Flying's great. The
Flying is
Dreadwing
great.
feels so good
Yeah.
to do. It's a shame it just pops up so late in the game.
Yeah, because that would have obviously completely made my own personal struggle much easier having that earlier. I'm interested to see how they position it in the third one because I kind of get why you hold it back for a certain period because you could just get on that thing and fly wherever, and they want to gate things off.
You miss everything, right?
Yeah, but now that we've had it, how do you put that back in the box and say, play another
That's
60
that's
hours and then you'll get it?
that's Metroid, baby. They did that in the beginning of the game. She's like, "Oh, I got into a fight and lost
True,
all my shit."
true.
Yeah.
But they can't withhold it
So
for as long.
I really,
Surely.
really hope not. Oh, I forgot how to override. Like you never really learned. All you do is
Yeah, you
stick
don't
in a
learn
hole and
nothing.
it does it for you.
Yeah.
She doesn't really know much about computers. She's it's like worse than an Apple user, really. It's like foolproof technology.
No, I agree. But the flying was great, but you get it way
Right.
too late. And I think for most people that don't play it as thoroughly as perhaps me or you, they would have gone, oh, maybe I will go back and do the stuff I'd missed because it's easy to get around. Although, again, with fast travel there, it's like, why would you choose to fly over? I mean, there's some bits that are you can only access through flying, or there's like little caves and bits and pieces. But if you literally had to go from one side of the map to the other, I think most people would just go, oh, I'll use the campsite and be there in a split second. But there is a
Here's
novelty to flying, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. I like how smart they are with not making it too bogging it down with arbitrary rules about when and where the
No.
Dreadwing can pick you up. You're in the water, it'll
Yeah.
scoop you up.
Yes, that is so
You
useful.
you whistle for it. It doesn't matter where you are. It picks you up in a second, and it's so considerate to the player
Yeah.
to do that. And going back to Red Dead Redemption 2, this is a game that wants to have its cake and eat it too, where it's supposed to be super immersive. Like you have to go to the barber shop to cut your hair. Fair enough.
I love that.
But like you could only put 3 outfits in your satchel on your horse. And then you're on your horse and you access the menu. It's like I want to change my gear. It's like you can only change your gear if the horse is in a trot or completely still.
Yep.
Instead of at a like running quickly. But when you do change your outfit, it happens in a second.
Yeah.
So like where's the immersion there? You're just cherry picking what's realistic or not. Like what are you doing?
Yeah.
I do appreciate that the Dreadwing they're like let's make this as easy as possible for the player. They've earned it because they've played this entire game. So just make it fun, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, no, the flying's good. It's just introduced way too late. The way they do implement it is really good. The fact that it hangs around in the area that you can then grapple hook onto and get on is really cool.
Oh, when I figured out you could jump and grapple to it as well,
Yeah.
that's great. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
And I like that there were some missions that you couldn't access unless you were flying. There's several that are locked,
Yeah.
and that again foreshadows that you're going to get at. I didn't want to get too excited in case it was something else. But that did open up a what I would consider a bug. Is there's one where you got to get to the top of a mountain, a quest, to get these 4 bits of armor that this person went up there. I think I don't know how they got up there now. They may have got dragged up there. They claim they flew or whatever. I think you find out they just died up there. And
Everyone in this game, they're just dead.
yeah, they
They're
just
like, my cousin got lost in the woods.
Yeah.
You go, oh, he's dead.
He's dead as well. So it's on this top of this mountain that you look up and you can't access. And for a while, it was under my, it said locked until you've completed. I think it's called Wings of the Ten, the mission. It's like seared into my brain because I kept seeing it. And I was like, okay, I'll come back whenever I see that. I assume that'll be in the next 10 hours. It ended up being the next 80 hours. It was that late in the game. But then at some point I reloaded the game. I was playing it several days later, and I noticed that was no longer there. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I've completed that mission. I didn't remember it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try and figure this out." Obviously, I hadn't unlocked the flying. I hadn't completed Wings of the Ten. I was like, oh,
Really?
Can't,
What happened?
Yeah, I can't get here or whatever. And then I went up to this mountain that was on the other side and used the glider. And I got over to it. I got over to the area that
Really, I tried to climb
I did
that
as well.
area
Yeah.
from like all angles. Yeah, you can't get far enough up. Yeah.
No. So I glided over once and it didn't trigger anything. So I wasn't supposed to be there. I hadn't done Wings of the Ten. And I was like, oh, game's fucked again, which it is. Tried another way. I climbed up the side. Like I was like proper, you know, when you just jump on the environment and you slowly like get an inch. And I was like really trying to cheese it.
It's like it's Skyrim. You can't cheese it every now and then.
Yeah, and I got up there again and again. No mission trigger for it. And then finally, when I'd done Wings of the Ten, I was like, right, I'll just fly over there. And then soon, you fly over there, and Aloy's like, oh, that's the mountain where, I don't know. And I was like, oh, okay. Drop down, and then, of course, the fucking armor's there, and then you have the battle with the sky, the Stormbird, and I was like, make your game tighter so that I can't get there if you're going to actually restrict me. And then, but if you can't, that's fine if I get there before I've done Wings of the Ten. Let me just do the mission. Anyway.
Yeah, reward me for trying.
Yes.
Right? It's an open world. Like, you don't think people are going to try
and
to get up there without it. Of course they are. And playtesters probably did. They just probably thought like 90% of people are not going to try, therefore we're not like the section that they got to where they're able to glide, we're not going to like lower the height of that specific precipice.
Yeah.
Just whatever, no one's going to do it. But you did do it, and they should just reward you for your effort.
Yeah, I had to wait and be like in the back of my mind worried that the quest had glitched. I was never going to get it. Spoke a little bit about the grappling hook. I think that was a smart introduction. Like that helps getting around, gives you some more options to climb and get up and down things. And then swimming we spoke about earlier. Whilst it's probably the least efficient way to get around, I appreciate that you can go underwater because that wasn't an option before. It kind of expands things. But yeah, it's not bad at all. It's not. But it's just that swimming in general sucks in games. So it's slow.
At least they give you an item that allows you to breathe underwater, so you don't have. The worst thing about any game is the breath meter, your oxygen meter.
Do you have you said you were claustrophobic earlier, but I don't know if you've played the Tomb Raider games. And
I also can't swim.
So there's parts in the Tomb Raider games where you'll be going in these caves, and even me,
I hated that.
Yeah, I bet you. Yeah, because even me, who's like not that bothered about. I wouldn't want to drown, but it's not one of those things I necessarily fear, and I can swim to a reasonable degree. But even in that game, I was like, I was getting antsy, like and you always just make it, which is.
And then they throw schools of piranhas in there. What are you doing? The game doesn't need this.
No one
doesn't
needs
need it at all.
No one needs
hide in the weeds. It's doesn't work.
No one needs that. Let's talk about combat. I don't know if you need to say much about combat because they didn't make too many changes to the core mechanics. There's a few new weapons they introduced. Get your view on those, and the way the outfits and the perks and the buffs you get are different this time round. But what did you make of the core combat? 'Cause this is definitely has been, at least for me, the standout kind of feature of the game was just how satisfying it is to pick these fuckers off and destroy and rip these machines to pieces and take all their resources. God, I love it.
I think you mean when you say machines, I think you mean robot dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs
I think that's
that look like stags.
yeah, it's great. I mean, it's the meat and potatoes of the game, and they know it's great, and they it's front and center. It's in focus. I think just a little aside. I said to Her Majesty, as my wife, I refer to her as Her Majesty as a joke. I said it's the bee's knees,
Oh,
and she's like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And I had to explain it because she's Japanese.
Yeah.
No, it's just it's just an expression that we use. But I had to like literally it mean bees. It rhymes. It sounds nice. It doesn't. Yeah, she's like, "What the hell is going?" The bee's knees. It's nice when you kind of look at language from the outside in. But yeah, it's great. Combat is awesome. I'm not a fan of them splitting the type of ammo that you're allowed to use between so many different bows, because I'm one of those people that gets a bit overwhelmed when you have too many choices for weapons.
yeah.
It doesn't bother me a lot per se, but the one reason that it did is, and I'll ask this to you, Otaps, how many times when you had a full wheel of weapons did you accidentally, with your left stick, accidentally choose the wrong ammo and not know that you did until you had fired like several arrows
Oh yeah,
at a creature?
that's fairly common, and that was I noticed I was doing that in Zero Dawn as well. So it wasn't like
Oh, is it the same? I didn't
it,
really remember.
it wasn't like they had regressed, at least the way I was playing, but I definitely had that issue where I would select acid instead of fire or whatever, and yeah, it's kind of a symptom of having so many different elemental weaknesses and
It's not
strengths.
that big of a deal.
No, but it is frustrating, especially because it can. Although the game is not necessarily hard, there are some battles where, especially if you don't have the right outfit equipped, like I had to a few times sit down and think, right, I need to get something that's strong against plasma here because I'm getting decimated by this thunder jewel when it does X. But yeah, it is slightly annoying, and it didn't. I don't think it ever cost me, where I died or anything. But it's just like one of those things
Oh.
where you're like, oh, I've got to slow the weapon down, choose it again, and clearly I then overcompensate and get the other one that was on the other side of the little wheel, and I think, oh, for fuck's sake, and then. Because it's your fault, kind of. I think that's the thing that annoys me. I knew that I'm just being careless to a certain extent, but I would appreciate some sort of way they could make it a bit
you're
more
also
solid.
you're running to the foreground like it's fucking Uncharted. Well, the time is slowing down, right? And you're just not taking your time to. But it's like twin stick shooter. Like if it's not a directional button or a button per se, like you're gonna not. It's not as accurate as a button, right? It's going to happen. I will say, and this is something that I appreciate about this game is, I don't know if you noticed, they nerfed the tear damage ammo by quite a lot.
Oh, didn't know they did that.
Now, I usually play games on hard, and this isn't some sort of like boast, like who cares what you play it on? Play it on whatever you want. But one reason that I do appreciate most games on hard is it usually requires you to, a lot of times on easier settings for games, you'll find the sweet spot in or like a weapon that you like,
Don't need
and
to
you
adjust.
can just use
Yeah,
it.
you just can.
Yeah,
use
yeah.
it.
You don't have to adjust. And one thing about games that are, if you play them on hard mode, sometimes not every game is equal. Is it requires you to look at more of the weapons or the options that the game presents you, and that the developers really want you to use in order to get through combat.
Yeah.
With the first Horizon, the tear ammo, and what the tear ammo is for people that don't know, I don't know why you'd be listening to this like 8 hours in, but it on impact it blows up a piece of the armor, or let's just say with a Thunderjaw, there's like laser guns on either side of its body, or like this thing that shoots out drones that shoot lasers at you. All the really, really annoying attacks that it can do. With tear damage, if you hit those, it'll blow those off much quicker than any other ammo.
Yeah.
And you could just use that for the rest of the game, and it made the game so easy.
Yeah.
In this game, what they do is they make it take longer to craft in that wheel when there's the time slowdown.
They do. You're right.
Yeah. And also it takes way late, at least for me, way later in the game did I get tear ammo. And it's also the requirement for crafting that is quite high.
Yeah.
Although later in the game you get so many shards it doesn't matter. But I do appreciate that, because even in the first game I just fell back on tear ammo and used it for every single encounter. Whereas earlier in the game, when I didn't have enough resources to constantly craft tear ammo, that I had to use more in my arsenal to take down
Yeah.
enemies. So I do appreciate that they nerfed it, because I'm pretty sure they realized that it's way too OP.
Yeah, I think there's even like this like gun that you could, not a gun, but like almost like a rifle or shotgun thing that you could get in the first game. I don't know if it is in this one. I didn't use it if it was, but it was like a tear blast, and that would just assault whatever was in front of you and just rip it to shreds.
Yeah, I'm looking at the names of these. There was one called the Terror Blaster. In this game, they have one called the Bolt Blaster, but I'm not sure the difference. I actually don't remember
No,
the Terror Blaster.
no, but
Maybe that's why they took it out, because they knew it was
yeah, it was. To
too
be fair, it
powerful.
was slow, but if you got yourself organised, you'd absolutely punish the machines and whatnot. But yeah,
Speaking of side quests, I do wish there were more side quests that specifically made you use a certain weapon so that you knew its usefulness in battle. Because you can lean on like your warrior and your sharpshooting bow for almost the entire game.
Yeah.
It would be nice if it's like, no, I want to show you how actually important or useful the bolt blaster can be, and do a specific one where like you can't use anything else. You have to use the bolt blaster to take down some enemy or something like that.
yeah, it'd be good if somehow they reworked it whereby certain weapon types, how much would I explain? Like if you needed a specific resource or needed to pick something off, you need to use, I don't know, the precision bow. If you used anything else, there's a higher risk of it just damaging that component outright and you not being able to use it. Like,
Okay.
and rather
Yeah,
than
yeah.
assigning it to like elemental stuff or certain areas of the, like, do it weapon by weapon so that certain weapons cause more. I think this does happen, but it's usually the ammo type that defines this, because that would encourage you to kind of have a different wheel of, weapons there. Because if you wanted to do, pick off certain bits and pieces, but yeah, there's the combat itself I thought was good, and they made a few changes, introduced newer weapons. I really like the spike throwers. I know they were slow, but I got a valor skill that was like powerful spike throwing, and there's other things as well. But it had towards the back end of the game, I had like exploding spike throwers, advanced
Is that the javelin?
Yeah, it was.
Ones? Okay.
It was devastating to land one of those and just watch it just rip off a massive chunk of health. Was good.
Sure.
But yeah, I didn't have any problem really with the combat itself. But I know you had a bit of an issue around the crafting. You wanted a whole section to talk about the crafting element of the game. What's got your goat here?
I'll focus most my like biggest rant on trophies and the like bloat stuff. So I'll try to keep this brief. And Mitch makes fun of me because I'll say I'm gonna make this brief, and then I continue to speak for 10 minutes straight while everyone's just patient. Well, Mick Womble is not patiently waiting. He will cut me off, which is his job. But I don't know about you, but there's a point in this game where I got so sick of everything has a crafting element. Everything. And even when you were talking about the cauldrons, like the award for killing the boss is you're able to override like 4 creatures. So each cauldron you get like 4 creatures, and then you're able to override everything. No, in this game they have another wall before that where you're able to access what it takes to override the creatures, and then you have to go to your home base, and it's like, oh well, now you have to hunt or find these 5 resources from said creature in order for you to.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? like can I just get a bow and have it be a good thing without their 5 levels of the bow to craft? Because
Yeah.
and I get for some people you don't necessarily have to upgrade the bow. It might be good or just get another one. But one issue with hard is you kind of need to upgrade that
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
to get the upper hand in battle, especially defense, because you'll die quite quickly in this game on hard. And it just got to the point where every single thing I have to do in this game is crafting.
Yeah.
And not only that, and this goes back to side quest stuff where everything's focused on battles, on combat. Like every side quest ends in combat. So you get to this point in this game where everything you're doing ends in combat. And on top of that, if you just want to upgrade your stuff, you also have to go out and do combat. You're not climbing a mountain to get resources or searching a submerged cave. Well, you get like the green shards and
That
that.
becomes irrelevant after like 30 hours because everything,
Yeah.
because it's like a low level upgrade, it turns out. You need like a legendary tusk off this alpha fucking machine that only spawns once every decade, and if you miss your opportunity.
And some of those components don't drop 100% of the
No.
time, even if you don't damage them.
Yeah.
Like the Dreadwing, nerve.
Yeah.
It's like a Dreadwing nerve.
Yeah.
It took me. I needed 3 of them, but it dropped like every 4th one that I killed.
Yeah.
And it's just a game that's sole focus and so much time is spent around combat to have another addition to that being combat yet again
Yes.
to the crafting. It just drove me nuts. Like, can I just get an armor that just does not require me to craft it to make it good?
Yeah.
I just yeah. It was too much. It's too much.
It seemed like an unnecessary introduction, unless I'm misremembering. I mean, it was only 6 months ago, but I don't remember upgrading weapons.
It wasn't that bad.
Or outfits.
Well,
did you do that? I don't think you did. I thought you just had the types.
You just have the types, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Could be wrong,
It
but
just,
it wasn't
you
as
know,
egregious
it's,
as this because I barely upgraded anything.
expanding RPG elements in a game. I
Yeah,
guess, I don't know.
I agree. I mean, the fact that I didn't bother doing it is a sign that because I usually like to do these things, but I just didn't. After a certain period, I didn't bother. I just got like trying to upgrade a legendary weapon or outfit. It's like the items you need just for one level is just absurd.
And here's the main thing of this OTAP. So you have all these side quests and you're doing all this side stuff that does reward you with resources because you are killing machines, right? And you're getting resources. The main issue with all of that is after doing all these side quests, going into the workbench, I still don't have the resources to upgrade this stuff.
Yep.
What I should be doing is through the side quest getting that stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen. So I don't feel like the side quest would be far more rewarding if on top of getting whatever skill points, a new bow, by the time I get to a workbench, I can actually upgrade my gear because I took the time to do the side quests. But no, it's completely separate from the side quest that I have to take time, completely stop doing what I'm doing, and just basically mine. You're just mining for resources. You're doing a JRPG grind fest to get levels. That's essentially what it is.
It tries to trick you though because you can create a job and then it marks it as a quest item job. So it's almost like, oh, if you want the quest, then just create the job. It's like, no, sorry, just drop these items into a side quest and make the rewards relevant. Don't make me create. I appreciate the job system, but I don't try and
nice
tell me
addition.
that's fulfilling your need to do a quest because that's not a quest. That's just helping me find things. But yeah, it seemed like an unnecessary. If it was there before, then an unnecessary advancement of this. And same with the pouches as well. They felt like more of a pain in the arse than because they've increased the amount of animals as well, which is good. But then you've got more shit to fucking slaughter and find.
And then it's RNG. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I got the fucking owl hide, but I need the owl bone. Like, it's dead.
She used to work on her fucking butchering skills and be able to extract all this stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm not when trying to get the bone, they all fucking disappeared. Like, how shit am I with a knife? I don't know. And I did that stuff actually. I upgraded every single
To the max.
pouch, and I got no trophy for it.
No,
so that's great.
You used to do one of each, didn't you? I think was the trophy. We'll get on to those. But just going to that point, I think it was Far Cry 4 that I played. I believe there's a mechanic in there where it's a little bit of RNG, but if you kill the animal with a bow, you're more likely to get higher reward items than if you shot it. Now, I like there's at least some level of how you kill the animal. You know, if you did shotgun something, for example, there'd be less there. But if you just took it out in one clean shot and, you know, it died hopefully peacefully, you may expect there to be more for you to harvest. I wish they did something like that rather than it being just purely random, because it's frustrating when you kill 30 of them and don't get the drop that you need. You're just like, there must be a better way of doing this. And in some areas you can buy some of these resources sometimes. Like the scrappers seem to have a lot of stuff that was quite useful, but you had to trade in those metal blocks that hopefully you accumulate. But
I accidentally sold all of that stuff because for some reason it was in the sellable category. I think they patched that out. I'm not sure, but
so I thought they took it away from me. I was like, they've nicked all my metal blocks, and then no, they were further on down.
I didn't know that. A mutual friend Rafa had told me like, no, you need those for if you don't want to go out into the wild and find rabbit bones, you need those blocks, and I had sold them all, and I didn't come into contact with him for hours on end after that. No. That's kind of my own fault for not reading the
It does say
but you think like they should. People complained about kind of the inventory system and how things were communicated to you in the menus in the first game. You think they would have had a specific category for shit, just junk that is only for selling
because in theory everything's sellable.
Shards. Yeah.
So if it's in that top bit, I had to carefully not do that, because naturally I'll just click them all and I'll be like, oh,
well, because you can highlight and sell like with triangle in bulk.
Yeah.
If you're able to do that in a game, like don't
do that.
Don't like do a cheeky like, oh, actually this one also can be used for upgrading type of thing. But not the end of the world. It's just more of it's a bit of a headache when you realize you accidentally sold a very important item.
No, I agree. Anything to say on leveling up or XP or the valor skills, the skill trees? Because the Cliff Notes opinion of my opinion on the skill trees was that I appreciate there being more things to put your points into, because the first one was very simplistic. It was like 5 categories, 5 different abilities. But I found it just the fact that I couldn't just get a bird's eye view clearly of actually what I had done and what I hadn't done was annoying me. Like I had to go into each individual tree, and then I had to scroll down still, because it was in this stupid like, oh, we're being clever with the way it's designed around this shape. I'm like, I don't care, just do a fucking line for all I care. I just want to be able to see where I'm at with this quite easily.
There's something to be said about more utilitarian design. Like I get you want to put your own graphic design flair on how the skill tree looks, but to a point, right? Just make me let me access it quicker and see the whole fucking tree.
I appreciate there being more stuff for people to put their points in. They've made it a bit more RPG like, with the different, like, you can increase your concentration by 2%, and you could also put outfits on that it also kind of complement that, so you can make different builds in theory. Like you can play around with that and but you just don't need to, at least on normal, and I'm sure you didn't invest too heavily in needing to do that on hard even.
That is, it's not a game that nudges you in any direction.
I was kind of trying to do it just for my own pleasure, but most people won't and don't need to.
They'll stick with what works until it doesn't, and then try to change.
Agreed.
Which is fine.
Agreed. About the machines, new versus old.
I thought it was fine. Like one thing I didn't know until like 70 hours into the game is the special moves that you learn for each of the. So when you press down, like when you're in combat and you hold down, what is it, L2 to highlight the wheel, it slows down time. If you highlight a specific weapon and you have the special R1 ability with the D-pad, there's like 3 per weapon. I didn't even know that existed.
Yes. The weapon techniques, I think they're called.
So like just notch 3 arrows in one
That's it.
and like release 3 arrows, or you can do this like kneeling animation and just like charge up the shot and shoot
Yeah.
it, which is the most OP
Yeah.
thing. And you just absolutely decimate every robot dinosaur, all 42 robot dinosaurs. And I didn't know that existed because I didn't just. There's so much going on, right? And you're running away from a dinosaur and time slowing down. And you don't have a lot of time. I didn't know that you could switch
And your
between those, but that might be my fault.
charging up as well. And you're like, do I need to use? Shall I use that? Which Valor have I got equipped? I've forgotten. Like, there's a lot there, but in some ways it overcomplicated what was fine in the first game. Really, I know they're trying to make it advance it, but it's not always necessary.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was fine. I appreciated some of the Valors. I used probably like maybe like 3 or 4 of them. I didn't use all of them. The Trapper category was totally unnecessary for me, but yeah, I thought it's fine.
Yeah, served its purpose.
I like the Valor where she kind of paints her face in that, and it does this kind of cool thing. Not every time. I wish I could skip that, but
well, it just falls off her face though randomly after you finish.
yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, who's controlling this camera? Who's she posing for?
Because you know, if that was Rockstar and Red Dead Redemption, you put that face paint on, it would only come off if you had a bath or if it rained. You know that's what they'll do. You'd be stuck with it, or you'd have maybe a kit that you could get out the satchel of your horse, but only when it's still or moving very slowly. You can't do that any other way. But it got stuck on my face once because I think I didn't. Some of them, the Valor meter only goes down if you use the skill, and I left it. I killed everything, and I didn't need any more. And it was like stuck on my face for about 10 hours. I was like, this looks quite cool. And then it just disappeared when I loaded it like another day. And I was like, oh, I quite liked that look. Machines, we got about 20 odd machines, 21 new machines. Any favourites? I mean, I hate all the flying ones to fire because I found them a right pain in the arse, and that goes for the original as well. Those Stormbirds, fuck me. But
they take so long to kill, and one reason I hate the Stormbirds specifically is towards the end of their cycle when their health is really low, they shoot up into the air really, really high, and you just can't see them. I mean, sometimes the camera gets in its own way, and they'll slam down and completely like take off a big chunk of your health, but there's almost no way to know to dodge it, really. The Glint Hawks in the first game were the worst. So they kind of flutter about in the sky and they'll just shoot a bit of ice at you.
Yeah.
I think they nerfed how powerful they are in this game. And I think people complained about that because they weren't as much of a pain in the ass as the first game.
No, I agree.
The Ravagers I hated. The ones with the giant dog ones, right? They're not the scrappers, but the giant dogs with there's just something. I think they might have killed me more than any other creature, robot dinosaur, in this game, and I don't know why. And then so we'll end on a positive, but the other one that I conceptually and in the trailer look awesome, and I love the design, but the Slither Fangs were a huge pain in the ass just because how long and thin they are.
Yeah.
Even when you slow down to the bullet time, it's really hard to hit them.
Yes.
And they close distance so quickly. I didn't, even in a giant round arena, I never had time to dodge them. They were constantly knocking me over.
That was definitely sometimes I would kill the machines and think that was really graceful. Like I was really on point then. I was so accurate. My precision was spot on. The Slither Fangs was just a fucking trench war every time. It was like I was getting
miss.
I was fucking fumbling around, and I was like, oh, these things. But no, I was a bit worried in the early going when one of the new machines ended up being what they called scroungers, and I was like, that's a fucking scrapper. I was I'm like, are we just going to get a repeat of other machines that just have a slightly different model? But I think in general they've done a really good job of introducing new and unique kind of, different types of machines in it. Like the Dreadwing's really cool. The Slaughter Spines, obviously the Spinosaurus, that's quite a sight when you first bump into one of those.
What I liked is the reveal of that wasn't ruined for me. And actually, OTAPs, I was doing the the San Francisco, the vista that you have to locate in the water.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to do it, and then I like hear something to the left, and I look, and it's the biggest machine out of all
Yeah.
what like 42 of these.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is that? Looks like a Spinosaurus, which I think is modeled after.
Yeah.
But it was just in the wild. I happened to see it, came across it like naturally, and yeah, it's a really really neat, also a really really neat boss fight that whooped my ass for a bit of it that I do appreciate.
Yeah.
Um, like what are some of the standout ones, whether it's an old or a new machine? It seems like they've done, from what I counted, there's 21 old, 21 new. That might be off by a bit. I do appreciate that they didn't just add 6 or 7 new
Oh,
ones.
yeah.
They basically doubled the
Yeah.
amount of machines, which is amazing.
It's great. Yeah, no. And they added, which is more of a meta thing, but they added elemental versions of each of these or some of these and an Apex version. I was like, okay, that's something harder to tackle. If I bump into the gold and I think it's purple armor, I'm like, oh shit, right, I best be on my wits here. But I mean, the old favourite's always going to be the Thunderjaw, just because it feels like that's the iconic one for the franchise. But I did like the Dreadwing. I did like the Slaughter Fang. The Tide Drippers are cool. That's obviously like a water based enemy. I'm not comfortable with the idea that you can swim and yet you're just completely exposed. There's no combat.
Yeah.
You have to hide or run away. So that's somewhat. I hate leap lashers. I hate them. Those stupid
The kangaroo
fucks dropping their stupid fucking corrupting signal that messes with your focus. Good lord.
You know what? I think you seems like you might agree with me. There are some enemy animations where they do one too many attacks in a row.
Yeah.
Or like you think like the
You've dodged the
like
worst
the
of these.
the bears. What
Oh,
are they
like
called? We got.
the claw, the frost claws or the fire claws.
Thank you. Yeah, we're looking at a document and
I'm still
let you know that
fumbling around trying to.
we're frauds as well. But like usually with an enemy, when you're like kind of doing the attack, it's like 1, 2, 3, like, and then you kind of dodge roll. But it just keeps going. It's like
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like that's too many. And there's so many enemies where they just keep going with this kind of single wind-up attack. And the leap lashers are one of theirs where they jump up in the air and they slam down to the ground like 5 times in a row. I'm like,
Yeah.
couldn't it just be 3?
Yeah.
Can you just do 3?
I agree. That's probably what fucked me off the most about them was that stupid jumping attack. But no, I commend them for putting so many different machines in. And like I said, I was concerned when I saw this Scrounger because I was like, that's just a clear copy and paste, and they've just moved the words around or the letters around and come up with that.
And the burrower, right, would be like the stand-in for the red eye watcher. Like,
That's it.
no, they've ran out of ideas. But
It's weird they keep the watchers. I didn't bump into them till like late in the last third. I felt like before I bumped into a watcher. Like San Francisco has a few of them, but I was quite appreciative. But no, that's definitely along with the combat. The enemies have always been a highlight, and I know they made a big thing about the human enemies there being better melee combat. Like it was okay. The fact that you can't block or parry, just at least those attacks, like other human attacks with spears, I feel like just blunts your offense and defense. Like you just got to dodge, and that's your kind of defensive way. Like think of some way to implement some sort of timing or parry, and that'd be cool. Like if you could riposte someone with a bit of skill or just timing. But
yeah, they should have done it, I think. How many, when I said how many times do you think you tapped in the L3 button for focus, how many times do you think you hit circle to dodge roll?
Probably again at least 6,000.
Just gotta do it.
But I got into a habit of rolling around the that's how I got about sometimes. I just do a couple of rolls here and there. It felt a bit quicker.
There were some fights I don't even think I actually moved other than dodge rolling, which is fine. Like you figure in those. One thing I do love is this game does a good job of letting the player know where the iframes are.
Yeah.
because there was so many times where I got into a groove where the Ravager is about to swipe,
Yeah.
and I'd roll, and his hand would clip through me, but I was in my iframe, and like I appreciate that the window was wide enough to that I felt like I earned not getting hit in that
No.
particular moment. Yeah.
I think they took away like the leaping roll you could do in the first one. You used to be able to hold circle and you dive further.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot that that existed.
There's some
Maybe they
strange
thought that
things,
wasn't important. I don't know.
maybe, but I was relying on that quite a lot, especially for the bigger enemies. Like you talk about
The-
those fire claws
you pl-
swiping,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
could get further
You
away from
yeah.
them, but I had to readjust a little bit. I was like, oh, and I was like, where's
I guess
that on the upgrade? Oh, it's not there. And I was like, what a strange. There's a few things that they took
after
away.
25 minutes of going through each skill tree, looking at each thing, I guess the only reason I didn't miss it is because I didn't remember it existed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I might have been in the same boat as you.
I still had like reflexes that were 6 months old at that point.
Yeah.
But no, overall good stuff. Let's talk about your favourite subject, trophies. Now, I'll get the odd platinum now and again if I feel like it's achievable and it's not going to require me to play much more of the game that I wouldn't have naturally played. This fell into the category where I would have actually done it all naturally had I just not missed a couple of icons. Like I missed one of the hunting grounds because it was on like a mountain somewhere, and I just didn't.
Sometimes when you can't see it until you
Yes.
zoom in really really close.
Yeah, and it was greyed out as well, and I was like, oh, that's where it is. And you know, the side quests I was always going to do. There's one more I think that was hanging on at the end, but I would have gone through and done them all. So for me, as an absolute rookie, I'm like, okay, that's fine for me. I've got a nice easy platinum. I feel like for you, you may well have a different opinion on the trophy list and the challenge that it's providing, or even just the strange sort of half asks that they ask you to do rather than everything.
It seems like PlayStation is leaning towards easier trophies, and by that I mean bad trophies. And what I did is I actually looked at what Zero Dawn trophies essentially had you do to get the platinum trophy.
Yeah.
And let's see if you can kind of see a connection or a similarity between all these trophies. Earn a blazing sun mark, the highest mark, in all trials in all the hunting grounds. Find all metal flowers. Find and access all the vantage data points.
Yeah.
All Banuk figures found. All corrupted zones cleared. Cleared all bandit camps. All skills learned. Now move over to Forbidden West. Earned at least a quarter stripe in all 3 trials at the hunting grounds. Won first place in 2 different gauntlet runs, which there are more.
Worst
Complete
activity.
4.
That's nearly as bad as the Vistas. That is actually probably my most hated activity. I did all of it.
The gauntlets are terrible.
They are. I will say.
say.
They are fucking awful. Who designed that and went, yep, that's really playable. That not only have you got the worst fucking mount system since The Witcher 3, you're then adding crap combat and just what I can only perceive to be rubber banding to make sure you don't just get away and win. And I was just like, oh my goodness.
I did. I admire you. I did exactly 2 of them to get the trophy, and I didn't touch the rest of them. However, on the hunting grounds, I did gold because I thought that was going to be a trophy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. A lot of these trophies, I expected to. Okay, so I'll continue quickly and then we'll go on. Complete 4 rebel outposts,
Yep.
not all. Complete 3 relic ruins, not all. Complete 1 arena challenge set, not all. Learn all available skills in 1 tree.
Yep.
There's what, 5?
Yep.
So it's not all skills. And then this is the most mind-boggling one. Complete 1 survey drone, 1 black box, 1 relic ruin, 1 vista point, and 1 signal tower. There are 0 separate trophies for fully completing each of those specific collectathons.
Yes.
That's mind-boggling to me that they're asking you to do a very arbitrary number of things in a open world game that most people who do trophy hunting assume and will pursue to do to completion. Now, this isn't some sort of black and white thing where I play an open world game, I do it 100%. They should ask you to collect 100% of everything all the time. That is not the case. In Far Cry 4, which is way more of a collectathon than this game, they ask you to collect, I think one of the trophies is collect 70% 5% of said collectible because
Right.
there's like 30 or 40 this collectible.
Yeah.
So even they know like that's way too much,
Yeah.
which is kind of a hint as to maybe instead of having 60 collectibles, you should just lower it to
Yeah.
what you're requiring for the trophy. However, in this game, like we had said, there's like 10 drones,
Yeah.
9 vistas, what the 9 relic ruins, 8 relic. If the number is that low, I don't understand why there aren't individual silver trophies rewarding the player for going out of their way to do all of that stuff. I
Yeah.
don't understand why they're watering down these trophy lists so much where it's just requiring you to do 3 of them, you'll be fine. If you want to give me one that complete one of them, which is very common, do your first relic ruin.
Yeah.
And then the next trophy is you've completed all of them. I'm fine with that. But especially with PlayStation um, first party games, the writing was on the wall with the newest Ratchet game. Now,
Yeah.
Insomniac trophies, platinum trophies, are relatively easy.
Yeah.
They do require a decent challenge, and even like the Spider-Man 2018 platinum trophy, the percentage is quite high. However, I do appreciate it asks you for the challenges to get gold stars or whatever they do in all the challenges.
Yeah.
You have to get the highest rank in said challenges. So I do appreciate that, but in every Ratchet and Clank game, you had to upgrade every single one of the weapons to level 5, which required you to play the game at least twice to do that,
Yeah.
sometimes 2.5 times. In the newest one, there is no trophy for upgrading all of the weapons.
No.
And there is a bit of, I don't know what's going on, but the people that care about trophies the most are the people that care about the trophies the most. And the people that might get a platinum trophy or play the game for an extra 5 hours to get it, it's such a small percentage that I don't understand why they're catering to that crowd versus the people that actually care about thoughtful trophies.
Yeah.
So I don't like where this is going. I'm worried that the God of War Ragnarok trophy list is going to be
Complete
too
half the
easy.
game, and that's it.
Yeah, right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like this. It's a trend. It's been a trend since maybe Spider-Man is kind of the start of this, but yeah, it's worrying to me. I don't get it.
It's straight. Yeah. I mean, I checked the platinum trophy percentage because I think on Sacred Symbols recently they mentioned the percentages for the Elden Ring trophy, platinum, sorry, and it was like 6.5% or something like that, and
Hi.
there was other games in there that were like 3%. I can't remember the other two they compared it to. So I thought, oh, I'll check Horizon because that wasn't taxing at all for me. It was just time consuming to a certain extent, and that's at 6-ish%. At least when I checked it, and in my region, I don't know if it is a full worldwide one. So I don't know. Maybe they want to pump those numbers up. But you're right. It's such a meta and specific kind of activity for hardcore players to go after that. What's the point in lowering the barrier? Like, you can't market. We've been through the stage where games did try and market the game, not directly, but they'd be like, oh, this is a really easy platinum game. And guess what? People who were interested in chasing the numbers would go out and play it and whatnot. Like, it's not a. You know what? And it works in reverse. Because had this game had something really difficult in it, I perhaps wouldn't have chased the platinum and may well have spent less time with it. And I appreciate when games have a level where the platinum trophy in my mind is something that I don't want to do, and then I can just check out. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't got to sit there playing it for X amount of time because I feel like, oh, this is an achievable platinum. I'm not enjoying the game any more than I did when I would have naturally finished. In fact, usually that's when I'm getting more and more frustrated. Like, a good challenging list for me works twofold. One, it gives players like you who like those things something to feel rewarded for and something worthwhile doing. But also for people like me, it doesn't suck me into it. I can just casually walk away and be like, that's too hard for me. I'm fine to admit that. But if they get easier and easier, I will start getting sucked in and thinking, oh, I might as well do that. I might as well spend more time on something that I perhaps necessarily don't want to do. So, yeah, I mean, I hear your thoughts, and we have to watch this space, won't we? I wonder what the Gran Turismo Platinum's like. It's like spend 80 quid in microtransactions.
Oh man, I'm so glad I'm not part of that scene. Otherwise,
Yeah.
my credit card might be in trouble. But yeah, like I think you bring up a good point, and I'm not trying to say like everything should be super challenging and only the best of the best get platinum. That's not what I'm saying. Like like Erebus Jones, a mutual friend. He's not necessarily interested in like the platinum trophy game. He's more of an Xbox and PC gamer, but he did get the Spider-Man trophy. But that platinum trophy does require you to go a bit further out of your way
Yes.
to get it. There is a bit of a challenge there, but it's a very balanced challenge. It's a very good platinum trophy. And I'm not talking about keeping people there. Oh, this platinum trophy is at 10%. It's too easy. All these people who aren't true gamers with a capital Z are getting this. That's not what I'm saying. Like, look at the Wolfenstein, not the New Blood.
Oh, is it the one where you can't die and it's on the hardest difficulty and it's
And not only,
permadeath?
yeah, permadeath, the hardest difficulty, which is a notoriously difficult game. Like that game is really hard.
Yeah.
You can't die a single time, and it's like a silver trophy or something. That's not what I'm talking about. All I'm talking about is thoughtful trophies. So if you're asking the player to collect or 8 relic ruins, 8.
Yeah.
Make a fucking trophy for collecting all 8.
Yeah. Now, my only other annoyance with the trophy was that I know it wasn't a particularly hard one to miss. Sorry, an easy one to miss, but I don't like the fact there was a missable trophy in this one. Just that you could, in theory, I know you scan the machines just out of you train to do it basically, so it's hard to do it. But the fact they didn't have like a workaround that if you did for whatever reason do that, and I know there's some moron out there that hasn't, and they've missed out on the platinum, and the only way to do it would be to kind of replay the game, because you know if you miss scanning the spectres, actually I think the spectres you can get in the arena, but the Spectre Prime is the last boss, so you have to scan that as well. The way they got around that,
if you overrode your final save, I think you'd be screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what it is,
and you
right?
might not realise until a few hours later where that might be the case. You might have, mainlined through the story and gone, "Oh, I'll do all the cleanup stuff." Got to the end and thought, "Huh? Where's this last machine?" It's like, dude, that was 20 hours ago. You've missed that. So I don't think that it seems clumsy. I mean, the way they got around it in the first game was that you could replay the last mission. So you could scan.
Why didn't they just do that?
I don't know.
There's a workaround.
I mean, it's more seamless this way, I guess. That you exit the story and it. Again, I'm talking about this stupid context, but it carries on. It carries on as though the world exists in that game save. But put it in the arena. It's a fucking arena. Just say we found the remnants of the Spectre Prime you defeated. Here's the last arena battle, and then again, there's even a challenge there for people. But now I hear your thoughts on the trophies because it's not something I actively chase, but I do appreciate those concerns. Let's start to tie us down. This has been one of the longest Spoilercasts I think we've ever done, which is good. I've certainly enjoyed it, but we'll just for the sanity of some people out there, they're probably in like month 3 of trying to listen to this. They're like, God damn it, when are these guys going to shut up?
Just break it into 8 parts.
Yeah,
and
that's it. Put it out that way. That's far too much editing for me. Any other business that we haven't called out or spoke about? I wanted to just mention one thing, and it's a random thing. It's related to the story. I should have called it out then and the characters, but the whole Ted Farrow demise. We kind of find out about how he ends up, and in some ways it's really fascinating. He tries to do the Far Zenith thing where he's trying to extend his life. He's got all these people around him running around trying to keep him, I guess, immortal is what he's aiming for, and it turns out he just ends up being some blob of shit basically. But the frustrating thing is never see him. It's like
never see him.
He's a key character since the very first one. He's the one who caused all this shit. He then killed all the other alphas that had helped do Zero Dawn, and then he's popping up again and again in this game. And when they get the moment to say, "Oh, he's actually still alive, but a blob of vegetable," we don't get to get that moment where we turn the corner and just see him, whatever he is, just sitting there like, and you'd be like, oh my god. I mean, be a bit Resident Evil, but I would have loved to have just had that moment where that's how you find out, rather than a fucking hologram on a terminal somewhere. That's the only any other business I kind of had that we hadn't picked up on.
Yeah, I'm like torn on that. I do like there's something about not showing
Less is more. People use your
specifically-
imagination. I get all that stuff.
Yeah. However, I'm torn on it. There is part of me that I wanted to see like this horrific
Bloodborne boss.
creature.
Like,
Yeah, right.
you're like, wow, do you know my name? What the fuck? He's
Wait a minute. Yeah. I do appreciate that there was this civilization across the pond,
Yeah.
if you will, that
Quinn.
had basically developed a religion around billionaires, which is obviously a kind of take on how people like bow down to Jobs and Elon Musk,
It's
and
very
yeah,
good.
it's nothing new, but I did appreciate that, and I admit it took me too long to figure out what a CO meant.
Oh yes. It's the,
God, that is embarrassing. I was sweating.
for those that
by the way.
haven't got the pen, it's CEO is CEO, because all the names in the logs are Ted Farrow, CEO of whatever company. It's like
You wouldn't know it's an acronym.
No,
for
no, 'cause they
anything, right?
don't.
It's very clever. I love that.
I do. That's the one thing that always draws me back. Well, not draws me back because we've only had 2 games, but I do love about Horizon Zero Dawn is the world, the lore behind it all, and little things like that. Like even if you pick up, I can't remember what it is now. If you pick up like a necklace, like an old fashion, they call it a chime because they think it's something you hang up in the wind and it makes noises. Like if you look in the
I didn't
description,
notice that.
there's all these little like tiny little detail bits where the way that Aloy and the others kind of interpret what these items are off base. It's quite funny just to read through and watch those. And I do love this world. I really do love what they've created here. And
Yeah, I do appreciate that kind of flavor text, that thoughtful flavor text they have going on.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, I do know that this is a wind pop filter. I couldn't find my my other one.
That's
if
all right.
anyone's
Looks
like,
cool.
look at this fucking idiot with his wig.
That looks good.
Anyways,
That looks cool. What do you want from the next game? We're presuming we're going to take on Nemesis, so we know that. But any sort of high level bits and pieces that you would like to see in the next game? We've had a lot to say critically. I think generally we did enjoy the game, believe it or not. But we always fall down on when we dive deep into things. I think it's just we do criticise things more than we praise them. But what would you like to see from what seems like now going to be the inevitable Horizon 3, whatever that may be called?
well, this is an issue that I have with a lot of open world games. Is I'm sick of games being held in the United States.
All right.
I think the United States is tapped. Like, please, for the love of God, go somewhere else. And ultimately, I think this game should do what every flailing horror franchise does, and you go to space. Come on, Jason X, Leprechaun 4, I think it was.
Dino Crisis 3.
Yeah.
I think it was
Wait,
3.
did they?
In one
they
of
go
them
to
they
space?
did. Yeah, the last one they
Yeah.
did. Well, not surprising that was the last one. I went to space.
But I mean, that presents a lot of issues in and of itself. Like once you're there, you have to conceive a whole new world. Is it like how much does the game doesn't really work if it's taking place on a ship per se? So I do understand if people don't think that's a great idea. That's fine. But like go somewhere else. We've already hinted at the Quen, right? So I want to see. It's the same thing with the world, right? Like different cultures
Yeah.
came about in different ways. They developed language. They developed everything from art to literature to clothing, and the way that all these different places go about things are completely different because they developed separately from each other, right? Babylon and blah 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 blah. Perfect point to shake it up a bit. Get away from what we know of basically the West is mostly where the game took place, like Colorado and westward.
Yeah.
Go to a different country. We know that boats exist. We know that people can get around. She can fly. I imagine a Dreadwing doesn't get tired, right?
No.
Go somewhere else and show us. In that case, they have a great opportunity to do whatever they want because the Quen themselves is kind of people that base their religion around like billionaires as gods.
Yeah.
Great. I want that explored way more. So, yeah, do that. Like the sky's the limit. They can do whatever they want with these cultures, and I'd love to see them explore that more. She needs to, in order to defeat Nemesis, she needs. I don't know, Otet. Do you want her to like go around the world, kind of like how long is it going to take you to sit on the charger and go across to to China? Like I don't know, that game's going to take you 300 hours. Like
Well,
I don't know. What are you thinking?
This is why the flying mechanic may help me out. If I could just fly there and skip over the awful terrain that the Chargers clearly can't navigate. Don't know how they're surviving. They trip over a fucking rock. I don't know what use they are, but yeah, that would create a problem. But no, I tend to agree that exploring another country or what would be interesting because the way that the culture has kind of grown up and inferred all the information they've been left with, and over time how they've cultivated that and what they've come up with would be good. I do have to save you from sort of the 0 comments we get anyway, but you fly on the Sunwing.
Oh God! Thank you so much.
The Dreadwing is the bat, isn't it? Now, I've probably got that wrong. People are like, it's not the bat. It's fucking something else.
No, you are correct, and that's actually something I've thought about. Where someone says like, I'm going to save you from the comments.
Should I have done that?
No, no, you did. You did. Yeah, the Sunwing. That's actually quite embarrassing for someone that created this giant list of every robot dinosaur in this game, and I fucking got the name wrong like 8 times. I deserve that.
Fair enough.
The email. I guess I'm not getting the emails, so I'll get after the episode. I'll give you my email address so you can forward those to me because
yes,
that's my fault.
No, that's not a problem at all. So yeah, look, Evan, thank you for your time. This is I appreciate you taking your pretty much all of your afternoon now, until or at least late afternoon, to speak to me about Horizon Forbidden West. Maybe we'll be more efficient next time. Should we have you on for a game? We'll have to think of a way of doing that. But I think the guys will enjoy that, especially those that have played the game. Anyone that's listening still at this stage, which I'm sure you are, or watching, we thank you for your support and for getting this far. Any last words, Evan, on Horizon Forbidden West before we get out of here?
No, the only thing is I listen to Idle Game Chat every week, so I'm actually pretty honored to be on the show. So thank you for inviting me on. For anything really. It's much appreciated.
No, it's great to have you on. As you know, I listen and watch sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, the Pixel Pints, and you always have interesting perspectives. I think we share a lot of similar thoughts on certain aspects, and we also have disagreements as well. So it's interesting to get you on, and you know, you thoroughly have played this game, so it seemed like a good opportunity to bleed over and have you on. Where I more than anything appreciate your time, so thank you very much for that. You've done me a favour here, so I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll speak to you soon. Everyone else, nothing more for us to say here though, other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.